Chapter 51, Manipulation Behind the Scenes, A Cruel World. Aside from Yagyu, 23 other candidates passed the second exam. Out of those, only 6 were not from Konoha, the rest were all Konoha genin. First, there were the 12 rookies, who alone took up 12 slots. Because of Kiba Inuzuka, his 2 teammates also passed the second exam, bringing the total to 14. Kabuto Yakushi and his 2 teammates, who were Orochimaru's spies planted in Konoha, took up another 3 slots. Even though Yagyu had already eliminated the Sound Ninja trio, 3 more Sound Ninja had still managed to pass the second exam. Clearly, in the 5 days since, Kabuto had learned of TOS and the others' deaths and reported it to Orochimaru. These 3 new Sound Ninja were likely replacements sent in by Kabuto or Orochimaru. Their goal was simple, to give Orochimaru an excuse to appear here. After all, without the Sound Ninja trio returning to report, Orochimaru didn't know if Sasuke Uchiha had used the power of the curse mark and whether he appreciated the gift he had been given. Orochimaru was likely here to observe Sasuke's reaction for himself. So, including the 12 rookies, Kiba's 2 teammates, Kabuto's group, 3 Sound Ninja, and Gaara's sibling trio, there were exactly 24 participants left. Cough, cough. On the proctor for this exam, Gekko Hayate, came a weak voice. After Hiruzen Sarutobi's speech, the proctor, Gekko Hayate, appeared in a flash, holding a clipboard. His sickly appearance, with dark circles under his eyes and a frail demeanor, made many of the genin question if he really was a jonin. But Hayate paid no mind to their stares and pointed at the large screen on the wall, saying, "Soon, the screen will display your names and randomly pair you up for matches. The names that appear will stay, and everyone else should head to the balcony on the second floor to wait. Before we begin the elimination matches, I need to confirm, is there anyone who wishes to forfeit?" As soon as Hayate finished speaking, Kabuto stepped forward from the crowd, raising his hand. "I choose to forfeit." "Your name is?" "Kabuto Yakushi, right?" "Understood, you may leave." Hayate looked at his clipboard, checked Kabuto's name, and said, "With 1 forfeit, that leaves." "I forfeit as well." "And me." At that moment, 2 of the Sound Ninja stood up, also choosing to forfeit. The jonin present exchanged curious glances at this, though their expressions showed understanding when they noticed the bandages on the 2 Sound Ninja. They didn't know much about this newly formed village, but seeing the state of these 2, it was clear that they were weak. It was likely they had reached their limit, so their forfeits drew attention away from Kabuto. "Understood, you may all leave," Hayate said, crossing off 2 more names. With 3 forfeits, there are now 21 participants left. 1 person will have a bye. Since no one else is forfeiting, I declare the elimination matches to begin. After waiting a few moments to see if anyone else would forfeit, Hayate pulled out a radio and signaled the examiners backstage, "Let's begin." Whir. The large screen on the wall lit up, displaying the names of the 21 remaining participants. After all the names appeared, a large VS symbol flashed between them. The names on either side of the VS cycled rapidly. Soon, 2 names settled. Sasuke Uchiha versus Yoroya Kato. Seeing these names, Yagyu couldn't help but chuckle to himself. So much for random pairings, this was clearly rigged. Had Sasuke's name not appeared first, Yagyu might have believed it was a coincidence. But with it being the same as in the original story, it was obvious that Hiruzen Sarutobi had deliberately arranged this to ensure Sasuke could quickly be taken away to have his curse mark sealed. "Sasuke Uchiha and Yoroya Kato, stay here. Everyone else, please move to the balcony on the second floor," Hayate announced. Yagyu and the others moved to the balcony, standing beside their jonin instructors. Kurenai Yuhi once again gave Yagyu, Hinata, and Shino a thumbs up, smiling as she said, "Great work. Once the exams are over, I'll treat you all to some barbecue." Thanks to Hinata's Byakugan and Shino's bugs, we didn't need to waste time searching for the other teams or the central tower, Yagyu replied with a grin. Hinata blushed shyly, while Shino, in his usual calm manner, said, "Yagyu's genjutsu was the key factor." "Don't be so modest, you all performed excellently," Kurenai praised, patting both Yagyu and Shino on the shoulder before wrapping an arm around Hinata's shoulders. "Now, let's watch the matches. You can see how you measure up against the others and get a sense of your future opponent's abilities." "Yes." The three nodded in agreement, either standing or leaning against the balcony railing as they watched Sasuke and Yoroi face off below. Yoroi Akato was one of Kabuto's teammates and an undercover agent planted in Konoha by Orochimaru. It was no coincidence that Orochimaru's pawn had been matched with Sasuke. Yagyu smirked at the thought. Master and apprentice are clearly both meddling with the matchups. The battle began, and ended, quickly. As in the original story, Sasuke, due to the curse mark, was unable to use his Sharingan, forcing him to rely on his academy-level skills to fight Yoroi. However, Yoroi possessed chakra absorption abilities, making it difficult for Sasuke, already weakened by the curse mark, to defeat him. Just as the curse mark threatened to spread further, Sasuke managed to suppress it with sheer willpower and defeated Yoroi using his newly developed Lion Barrage technique. It seemed that Sasuke had indeed encountered Guy's team during the second exam, and Lee must have given him a proper education on the way out of the complex. Orochimaru, watching Sasuke win without using the curse mark, grew even more intrigued by this vessel. After the match, Kakashi took Sasuke away to seal the curse mark, while Orochimaru quietly slipped away. The screen flickered again, and the names for the second match soon appeared. Shino Aburame vs Tsurugi Misumi. Well, that's it for me. No way I'm getting past this, came a despairing voice from the other side of the balcony. Kiba's civilian teammate, holding his head in frustration, shouted, "I'm done for." Facing someone like Shino, I'm definitely out. Hearing this, Naruto shouted back indignantly, "Hey, what's that supposed to mean?" Tsurugi didn't respond to Naruto, instead drawing strength from Kiba and their other female teammates' encouragement as he steeled himself to face Shino. As expected, the match ended with Shino's easy victory. Unless a civilian ninja was favored by their Jonin instructor, promoted to Chunin, or exchanged military achievements for jutsu scrolls, they would be lucky to learn even one or two jutsu in their lifetime. Moreover, civilian ninja often had very limited chakra reserves. In the original story, Kakashi Hatake was shocked when Sasuke, a prodigy, could use a C-rank jutsu like fire style, great fireball jutsu at such a young age. Most civilian ninja didn't even have enough chakra to use a C-rank jutsu at this age. Against Shino, who had been trained by his clan since childhood and could wield a wide array of insect techniques, Tsurugi was lucky not to have been knocked out in the first few seconds. Shino had clearly held back. This world, where bloodlines ruled supreme, was indeed a harsh and cruel one. Chapter 52, Hinata and Yagyu's Opponents, a Battle of Top Students. After Shino Aburame's victory, the pairings for the third match quickly appeared. Kenshin Misumi vs Kankuro. Like Yoroi Akato, Kenshin Misumi was one of Orochimaru's spies planted in Konoha, and one of Kabuto's two teammates. However, this particular spy didn't seem very bright. During his fight against Kankuro, he shamelessly used his body modification technique, making his body stretch and bend like a snake. Those unfamiliar with Orochimaru might not notice anything unusual. But for those who knew him well, like his former disciple, Enko Mitarashi, or Hiruzen Sarutobi, they could clearly see Orochimaru's influence in Kenshin's techniques. Even if Kenshin won, he would likely be handed over to the interrogation department afterward. Unfortunately for him, Kenshin wasn't a match for Kankuro. At first, his body modification technique caused Kankuro some trouble. But once Kankuro understood his abilities, and with no new tricks up Kenshin's sleeve, Kankuro quickly defeated him using his puppet. The fifth match was Shikamaru Nara vs Taira Raiki. Taira Raiki was the only remaining sound ninja who hadn't forfeited. However, before Shikamaru could step forward, the sound ninja raised his hand and said, "I forfeit." This drew strange looks from many in the audience. Some, more suspicious, eyed him with scrutiny. It was odd. He hadn't forfeited earlier but was now choosing to withdraw. What was his game? Unbothered by the stares from high-ranking officials, the sound ninja forfeited and quickly left. His and his teammates' mission was merely to cover for Orochimaru and Kabuto. Now that Orochimaru's goal was achieved, there was no reason for them to stay. After all, they were far weaker than TOS and his group. Hiruzen Sarutobi, smoking his pipe, whispered to a nearby special Jonin, "Investigate these sound ninja and their Jonin instructor." "Yes, sir." With the sound ninja's withdrawal, the names on the screen began to flash once again. At the same time, a figure quietly appeared on the second-floor balcony. It was Kakashi, having just finished sealing Sasuke's curse mark. Instead of reporting to Hiruzen Sarutobi about his encounter with Orochimaru in the sealed room, Kakashi informed Naruto and Sakura of Sasuke's condition before joining them to watch the upcoming matches. As the sixth match was revealed, no one noticed the sudden change in Yagyu's expression as he leaned against the railing, his pupils contracting to the extreme. How is this possible? The sixth match displayed Hinata Hyuga vs Yumiko. Yagyu was very familiar with Yumiko, as were Hinata, Shikamaru, and Choji. Before Hinata joined Yagyu's small circle, Yumiko had been Sakura's desk mate. But that wasn't the issue. The reason Yagyu was so shocked was, why is Hinata's opponent Yumiko? From Sasuke Uchiha vs Yoroi Akato, it was clear that, just like in the original story, the match pairings weren't random but manipulated. Sakura vs Ino could be chalked up to coincidence. But two matchups, without a doubt, had been deliberately arranged: Sasuke Uchiha vs Yoroi Akato and Hinata Hyuga vs Neji Hyuga. As the last major clan in Konoha, the Hyuga clan was one of Hiruzen Sarutobi's most prized and important assets. If not for the fact that it was rare for a Hyuga to reach Kage-level power, and the fact that they had always remained loyal to the Hokage line, the Hyuga clan might have faced similar suppression as the Uchiha clan. Since the creation of the caged bird seal, the clan's main branch had always produced the most talented and strongest members. But this generation was different. The branch family had produced a prodigy, Neji Hyuga, who had been the top student in the 59th class of Konoha and its most outstanding genin. In the original story, Hiruzen Sarutobi arranged the match between Hinata and Neji to see whether the future of the Hyuga clan's strength lay with the main branch or the branch family. But now, Hinata's opponent wasn't Neji. Could it be that Hinata's match against Neji in the original story was just a coincidence? Was the only deliberate manipulation Sasuke vs Yoroi? Though confused, Yagyu didn't let it show. He smiled and encouraged Hinata, "Hinata, good luck." "Yes," Hinata nodded, smiling as she made her way down to the arena. As fate would have it, both she and Yumiko had been seated on the same side of the balcony. As they descended together, Yumiko quietly said to Hinata, "Hinata, please go easy on me." Hinata nodded seriously, "I will." Hinata felt grateful toward Yumiko. Had Yumiko not agreed to switch seats with her, Hinata wouldn't have grown as close to Ino and Sakura as she had. Thanks to Yumiko's kindness, Hinata had formed the friendship she longed for and could be near the person she admired. So, Hinata decided to go easy on Yumiko during their match. When the fight began, Hinata didn't activate her Byakugan nor use her gentle fist techniques. Instead, she engaged Yumiko with only the basic taijutsu taught at the academy, treating the match like a friendly spar between novice genin. Throughout the fight, Yumiko only managed to use the basic academy techniques like the substitution jutsu. It wasn't that her Jonin instructor hadn't taught her more, but that she hadn't yet mastered them. After about 20 exchanges, Hinata used a quick body flicker to appear behind Yumiko, holding a kunai to her neck, ending the fight. Watching Hinata's performance, Neji Hyuga, from Guy's team, furrowed his brow. His dislike for the Hyuga heiress deepened. She could have ended the fight quickly, so why hold back? As the heiress of the main branch, sparring like this with a civilian genin was a disgrace to the family name. Hiruzen Sarutobi, on the other hand, nodded in approval. Such kindness towards one's own was a rare and commendable trait among the ninja clans. If Hinata were to inherit the Hyuga clan, she would pose no threat to the village's leadership for decades to come. When Hinata returned to the balcony, the names on the screen started flashing again. Before Yagyu could congratulate her, many eyes turned toward him, his sensei Kurenai Yuhi, Shino, and even Hinata. On the screen, the match was displayed as Yagyu vs Neji Hyuga. Yagyu's face showed a brief flicker of surprise. Hiruzen Sarutobi, watching from above, smiled knowingly, his pipe puffing small clouds of smoke. As Yagyu suspected, the match pairings were indeed rigged. When Hiruzen saw the list of participants who had passed the second exam, he initially considered testing the two Hyuga heirs against each other. But upon seeing Yagyu's name, Hiruzen changed his mind. Now, he wanted to witness a battle between this year's top student and last year's top student. At the same time, Hiruzen wanted to use this opportunity to evaluate Yagyu's potential, this exceptional civilian-born ninja. If Neji won, the Hyuga clan's inter-family conflict could play out in the final exam. But if Yagyu won, it would prove that he was worth investing in, making him a valuable asset for the Hokage's faction. This arrangement was a win-win for Hiruzen. Chapter 53, No More Pretending, Let's Reveal the Truth, I'm Senju Yagyu. Yagyu was indeed very surprised. Just a moment ago, he was still wondering if the original matchup between Hinata and Niji was just a coincidence. Then, in the next second, he was paired against Niji Hyuga himself. There was no doubt now. Yagyu's suspicions were correct, the pairings in the original story were manipulated, and they were still being manipulated now. However, instead of watching a battle between the main branch and branch family heirs of the Hyuga clan, Hiruzen Sarutobi was more interested in watching a match between the top students of two different classes. Yagyu calmed his emotions, nodded at the encouragement from his teammates in Team 8, and then used body flicker to appear in the arena. Yagyu, go for it. Don't hold back just because he's from Hinata's clan, beat him up. Ino's energetic shout echoed across the arena, drawing stares from the audience, but she didn't care. This boldness made Sakura and Hinata a bit envious. Hinata, too shy, and Sakura, too ladylike, didn't have the courage to shout like that, so they silently cheered for Yagyu in their hearts. This kid has quite the charm, doesn't he? Asuma Sarutobi, lighting a cigarette, muttered enviously, is it true that being handsome lets you do whatever you want? Ever since their days at the Ninja Academy, he hadn't even managed to win over Kurenai Yuhi. But Yagyu. He was surrounded by 3 beautiful and adorable girls, and they all seemed to get along perfectly. If it were anyone else, Asuma would have suspected that the girls were pretending to like each other. But he knew Ino well, and he understood that she wasn't faking it. How did Yagyu manage to keep things so balanced? Byakugan, activate. Niji Hyuga, who had just stepped down from the viewing platform, activated his Byakugan. However, he didn't immediately assume the gentle fist stance or attack Yagyu. Instead, he carefully examined Yagyu's body. Just as I thought. A few seconds later, Niji wore a knowing expression. I was curious about this when we were at the academy. You, a commoner with no personal teacher, how could you surpass the heirs of the great clans? And how did you manage to use a B-rank water release in the 5th grade? By all rights, your background should have doomed you to mediocrity, with no chance of achieving greatness. But somehow, you did the impossible, as if defying fate itself. Now I see, you didn't defy fate. The reason you've always been able to surpass even the heirs of great clans and hold the top student position is because it's your destiny. Niji pointed at Yagyu, continuing, your chakra reserves are at least dozens of times greater than mine. Aside from that blonde idiot and that guy from the sand village with the gourd, not even Lord Hokage has as much chakra as you. What? Hearing this, the genin and even the jonin in the stands were shocked. Many of the more skilled or specialized jonin immediately began to sense Yagyu's chakra levels, and their expressions turned to astonishment. Incredible chakra levels, at least dozens of times more than mine. Isn't he Kurenai's student? She sure lucked out. Kakashi Hatake lifted his headband, revealing his Sharingan, and analyzed Yagyu. Such chakra reserves, and his hair and eye color. Could he be? As the jonin around him murmured in awe, Hiruzen Sarutobi, smoking his pipe, stared through the thin haze of smoke at Yagyu below, feeling a rush of excitement. So similar, incredibly similar. Watching Yagyu, who remained unfazed, Niji continued, the history books record that the Senju clan, in an effort to integrate with both the clans and the common people of Konoha, had many of their members give up the Senju name and blend into the village. After decades, the Senju are Konoha, and Konoha is the Senju. Silver hair, red eyes, and incredible chakra reserves, your features are almost identical to the second Hokage. It's clear now. You are a descendant of the Senju clan, having inherited their bloodline, which explains why you've always been able to surpass even Uchiha Sasuke and the heirs of other major clans. Gasp. The moment Niji finished speaking, all the jonin in the stands collectively drew a sharp breath. All their previous doubts suddenly cleared away, like clouds parting to reveal the sun. Silver hair and red eyes, combined with this chakra, he really does resemble the second Hokage. A descendant of the Senju clan. No wonder he's the top student this year, and in such a remarkable class too. I wonder just how strong he really is. Kurenai Yuhi, finally realizing the truth, muttered to herself, no wonder Yagyu could use such powerful water release techniques in a place without water. It all makes sense now. Yagyu-kun. Hinata's eyes widened as she stared at Yagyu, her heart filling with an indescribable joy. If Yagyu truly was a descendant of the Senju clan, maybe, just maybe, she could be with him. Her father and the elders wouldn't oppose the relationship. In the eyes of the Uchiha, they and the Senju were two of the founding clans of Konoha. But to the other ninja clans and the daimyo, the Senju were the true creators of Konoha, while the Uchiha were seen as the defeated, the clan that Senju Hashirama had eventually subdued. In their eyes, the Senju were the legitimate founders. That's why, when Tsunade returned to the village, she was immediately chosen to be the fifth Hokage, and even Danzo didn't dare to contest the decision. He couldn't contest it. If Yagyu really was a descendant of the Senju, his status and position would change entirely. He wouldn't need Ino to approach the Hyuga clan on his behalf. Instead, he could go to them directly. Previously, if Yagyu had pursued Hinata, it would have seemed like a frog desiring a swan, foolish and overreaching. But if Yagyu was a descendant of the Senju, it would be a perfect match, two golden children destined to be together. In this world, still ruled by feudal lords and nobles, these double standards were all too common. Your theory is interesting, but it lacks evidence, Yagyu said with a smile. However, I'm flattered. After all, the second Hokage is my idol. After speaking, Yagyu raised his hand, making a gesture of respect with two fingers, saying, as fellow Konoha ninja, please guide me. I'm confident in my theory. It's your destiny, Niji said, raising his own hand in the same gesture, filled with fighting spirit. And your defeat will also be your destiny. After exchanging the formal ninja salute, Niji immediately assumed the gentle fist stance. But in the next moment, both Niji and all the ninja watching were stunned. Yagyu didn't lower his fingers. Instead, he quickly formed a series of hand signs. Single-handed seals. Then Yagyu inhaled deeply, puffing his cheeks, and shouted. Water release, great waterfall technique. It was as if a dam had burst. A torrent of water shot from Yagyu's mouth, drawing moisture from the air as it expanded into a massive wave, towering even above the viewing platform. It surged forward like a god of the sea, crashing down toward the small figure of Niji Hyuga. Chapter 54, Shockwaves Throughout the Arena, Hiruzen Sarutobi's Excitement. Rotation. Staring at the massive wave crashing down on him, Niji Hyuga's eyes widened. He didn't even have time to be shocked by Yagyu's one-handed seals. Niji immediately spun, releasing chakra from all of his body's points, executing the 8 trigrams palms, revolving heaven, a technique only taught to the main family but which Niji had learned through his own genius. A massive spherical barrier of chakra instantly formed around him. It wasn't that Niji wanted to use rotation, he had no choice. Yagyu's one-handed seals were too fast for anyone to react. Moreover, his water release technique was incredibly overwhelming, so much so that the massive wave, taller than the viewing platform, would flood the entire hall. Niji had no space to evade. As soon as Niji's chakra barrier formed, the water wave crashed down on the rotating sphere. Boom. A deafening roar echoed as the tremendous water flow surged outward, filling the hall. The proctor, Hayate Gecko, had to instantly retreat to the second-floor platform. Just as the water level neared the stands, it seemed to hit an invisible barrier, diverting into other parts of the tower. Yagyu, standing on the water's surface with chakra infused in his feet, crouched down and placed his hand into the water. A small whirlpool formed around his hand, spiraling upward like a snake, coiling around his arm. As the water level swiftly dropped, the still-spinning chakra barrier remained intact. But all eyes weren't on the barrier, they were fixed on Yagyu's hand. In Yagyu's hand was a spear made of water. Seeing this, the jonin in the stands, their pupils contracted sharply. Even Hiruzen Sarutobi and Kakashi Hatake were visibly stunned. Might Guy, who usually had a jovial attitude, was now serious, ready to step in and forfeit the match for Niji. But he was just a second too late. Whoosh! The sharp whistling of the spear cutting through the air filled the arena. Yagyu leaped high, hurling the water spear with immense force. Like a shooting star, the high-speed spinning chakra barrier shattered with a crack. Niji, who had been spinning within, was thrown to the ground. Nearby, the water spear had embedded itself deep into the floor beside him, its head and shaft buried in the ground. The next moment, the water spear exploded. A terrifying suction force, like an invisible giant hand, grabbed Niji and spun him violently in the air. Water from the surrounding atmosphere gathered, forming a swirling vortex. More and more water accumulated in the blink of an eye, creating a massive water tornado. The intense suction force caused the Jonin and Genin on the platform to grab onto the railing, chakra coursing through their feet to hold them steady as they resisted the pull of the water tornado. 8 gates, 5th gate, gate of limit. Open. Just as the water tornado threatened to destroy the arena and the second-floor platform, a powerful shout rang out. In an instant, a figure enveloped in green energy shot out like an arrow from the viewing platform, delivering a kick to the water tornado. The terrifying water tornado was immediately dispersed by the kick, and the resulting chakra and water turned into a torrential rain that soaked the entire hall and viewing platform, drenching everyone. The figure responsible for this was none other than Might Guy. When the rain finally ceased, Guy was standing with the unconscious Niji in his arms. The match is over. The winner is Yagyu. High-8 Gecko reappeared in the hall and announced the result. The entire arena was silent. Everyone, from Genin to Jonin, even Hiruzen Sarutobi himself, had forgotten about being drenched. All eyes were on Yagyu, who was calmly slicking back his wet hair with his hand. Gulp. Someone audibly swallowed, breaking the tense silence. Shaky voices started to murmur. SS rank water release. There's no mistake. That level of elemental transformation and shape manipulation, it's definitely a secret technique of the highest level. A water vortex, a water spear, and a water tornado. Isn't that the second Hokage's water release, water-severing wave? He really is a descendant of the Senju clan. The discussion spread like wildfire throughout the hall. The Jonin who recognized the water-severing wave looked at Yagyu with newfound awe. Before, they had been skeptical of Niji's deductions. But now, after witnessing Yagyu's mastery of water release, they were 90% convinced. Silver hair, red eyes, an enormous chakra reserve, and mastery of the second Hokage's ultimate water release technique. Yagyu was like a younger version of Tobirama Senju. Unfazed by the attention, Yagyu calmly walked over to Might Guy and smiled. My attack avoided hitting his body. He's only suffering from water inhalation and chakra depletion. Let me heal him. Thanks, kid, Might Guy grinned, his signature toothy smile returning. There wasn't a hint of anger or dissatisfaction over how Yagyu had nearly taken down his student. As Yagyu began healing Niji, Hiruzen Sarutobi watched from the stands, his hands trembling slightly as he held his pipe. His emotions were surging, indescribably intense. Sarutobi had been observing Yagyu since his time at the academy. After all, the class of Konoha Year 60 was incredibly special. Naruto's generation symbolized the future of Konoha. Their success would mark the village's rebirth. Their failure would mean Konoha's demise. Anyone who dared harm this new generation would cross Hiruzen's bottom line, even Danzo, who Sarutobi had tolerated for so long. To ensure their growth and safety, Sarutobi had assigned Kakashi to guide Naruto and Sasuke, Asuma to lead the Inoshikacho trio, and Konoha's Genjutsu specialist to instruct Team 8. Even Niji, who had graduated a year earlier, was placed under Might Guy, ensuring their protection. Of these Jonin instructors, 3 were elite Jonin, showcasing just how much Sarutobi valued these 12 young ninjas. Originally, Yagyu hadn't been part of Sarutobi's inner circle of concern. But after Yagyu became the top student, and continued to hold the position, while forming close ties with the heirs of the Hyuga and Yamanaka clans, he finally caught Sarutobi's attention. Sarutobi had observed Yagyu several times through his crystal ball, watching him teach Ino and the others tree climbing, water walking, and medical ninjutsu. He'd noticed Yagyu's exceptional chakra control and marked him as a talent worth nurturing. When he later saw Yagyu use water release and sensory techniques, Sarutobi decided to take a gamble. He wanted to see if Yagyu had the potential to wield in-release chakra. That's why, during team placements, Sarutobi had chosen Yagyu over Kiba Inuzuka. After receiving positive feedback from Kurenai about Yagyu's abilities, Sarutobi began to see Yagyu as a potential new genjutsu specialist for the village. But what Sarutobi didn't expect was that he had vastly underestimated Yagyu's talents. With such immense chakra reserves, mastery of water release, and even Tobirama's ultimate water release technique, whether Yagyu was a true Senju or not, his innate gifts and mastery of water techniques could turn him into a copy of the second Hokage. Even a replica of Tobirama Senju would grow into a pillar of Konoha. With Naruto and Sasuke eventually coming into their own, Konoha could return to the glory days when the Sannin protected the village. With that future in mind, Sarutobi felt reassured that he wouldn't have to face the former Hokage with shame when his time came. Chapter 55, Yagyu's Envy. Thanks to Yagyu holding back, Niji Hyuga didn't suffer any severe injuries. Under Yagyu's treatment, his pale complexion quickly regained color, though Niji didn't wake up right away, likely due to chakra exhaustion. Hayate Gecko summoned medical personnel to take Niji away on a stretcher for rest. Meanwhile, Yagyu returned to the viewing platform. "Yagyu, have you perfected that technique?" The moment Yagyu rejoined Team 8, Shino Aburame immediately asked. "Yeah," Yagyu replied with a smile, nodding. "I perfected it a short while ago." As Yagyu had expected, after obtaining the Ice Release Kekkei Genkai, he not only gained wind chakra but also found it much easier to master wind and water element techniques. With the help of the Shadow Clone Jutsu, Yagyu quickly perfected the Water Release, Spiraling Water Vortex and the True Water Release, Hard Whirlpool Water Blade. Both of these water release techniques required no hand signs. In all of Konoha, Yagyu's mastery of water release had already reached a level beyond comparison. When he eventually learns or develops more water release techniques, he'll become a master of water release, not only in Konoha but also in the ninja world. With his immense chakra reserves, Yagyu might even be known, like Tobirama Senju, as the men who made a contract with the sea. Or more casually, Sea Release. At this moment, the screen in the arena, which wasn't damaged by the water, flashed new names. The 7th match, Sakura Haruno vs Ino Yamanaka. My opponent is Sakura. Ino looked stunned and unknowingly spoke the truth. What a coincidence. This can't be rigged, can it? Sakura also appeared surprised. Out of the 21 contestants and 10 rounds with one person left out, she happened to be matched with Ino. Amid their teammates' cheers, Sakura and Ino descended to the arena, facing each other. "Ino, Sakura, do your best." Yagyu's voice rang through the arena, drawing a lot of attention. Yagyu, like Ino, seemed unconcerned with the looks of others. At some point, he had pulled out a camera, snapping pictures of the scene while cheering for the two girls. Watching this, several jonin twitched their mouths in disbelief. Even Kurenai Yuhi sighed, rubbing her forehead in exasperation. Yagyu was great in every way, but his heart was too fickle. Anyone who wasn't blind could see Hinata's feelings for him. But Yagyu never responded to her and was also incredibly close to the other two girls. What's more outrageous was that Hinata didn't seem jealous at all. She got along wonderfully with those two girls, and it wasn't fake. It was nothing like the drama-filled situations when girls in their youth had fought over Kakashi Hatake. Had the times changed? Asuma Sarutobi, meanwhile, had a sudden realization. Could Yagyu's success be attributed to his thick skin? "Yagyu, watch me shine." Ino flashed a toothy grin, giving Yagyu a thumbs up. Sakura also smiled sweetly and gave Ino a peace sign, playfully warning, "Ino, don't go easy on me, okay? If you lose, don't start crying," Ino teased, before forming the opposing seal. Whiz, whiz, whiz. The two girls pulled 3 shuriken from their pouches and threw them at each other, launching a battle that resembled the original series but with much higher quality. Over the years, they had sparred countless times in hand-to-hand combat, with each winning some and losing others. But this was their first real match without restrictions. Sakura, aware that Ino had already mastered her family's secret techniques, stayed on guard with her sensory abilities, giving Ino no chance to use her jutsu. Currently, Ino had only mastered the mind transfer jutsu, so she couldn't overpower Sakura, unlike in the original where she succeeded because Sakura lacked sensory skills. Now, they could only rely on their basics. The girls continuously threw ninja tools, occasionally using smoke bombs while employing the body replacement jutsu and body flicker jutsu to feint and evade, leaving spectators like Taku and Yumiko slack-jawed. Who knew academy basics could be used like this? Even the jonin didn't find the battle boring, instead, they watched with admiration. To have such strong fundamentals at their age was a kind of talent in itself. Both girls displayed excellent chakra control, making them ideal candidates for medical ninjutsu and sealing techniques. It was now clear that Ino would likely rise to a significant position in the interrogation department in the future. After running out of ninja tools, Ino and Sakura engaged in close combat, their rich battle experience once again impressing many. After countless exchanges, a fatigued Sakura finally collapsed, allowing a similarly exhausted Ino to pin her down. The match is over, and the winner is Ino Yamanaka. Hayate Gecko announced the result while glancing at his pocket watch. This match had lasted the longest so far. Whiz. Yagyu, who had captured every moment of the fight and used several rolls of film, suddenly appeared in the arena. He picked up the tired and messy Sakura and Ino, one in each arm, and quickly returned to the viewing platform to heal them. The elimination matches continued. The 8th match, Naruto Uzumaki vs Kiba Inuzuka. Awesome, my opponent is Kiba. I'm definitely going to win. What? That's my line. Naruto's joyous shout echoed, responding almost directly to Taku's earlier lament and instantly annoying Kiba. There was no doubt, Naruto, the chosen one, was incredibly lucky. Because at this point, Naruto was genuinely weak. After being hit with the 5-element seal, all he could use was the multi-shadow clone jutsu. He had a massive amount of chakra but no powerful techniques to utilize it. If his opponent had been Shino Abirame, Kankuro, or Temari, Naruto would have definitely lost. Even against Kiba, the fight was tough, his shadow clones were like fragile balloons. But, just like in the original, Naruto sealed Kiba's sense of smell with a fart, dealing him an unexpectedly large blow, and ultimately used a variation of Sasuke's Lion Barrage, called Naruto Uzumaki Barrage, to defeat him. Winning in such a comical fashion, Naruto had relied heavily on luck. But no one could predict that in a month's time, the same Naruto, who had to rely on luck to beat Kiba, would become strong enough to take down the one-tailed Jinchuriki. Had Yagyu not already beaten Neji, Naruto might have made his name by defeating the former top student of the previous year. Such is the life of someone blessed by fate. Sometimes they stagnate for a while, and then, all of a sudden, they skyrocket, their strength growing exponentially. With Naruto and Kiba's match concluded, the fight Yagyu had been eagerly anticipating finally arrived. The 9th match, Gaara vs Rock Lee. Before Naruto and Sasuke's reincarnations began to take effect, and before the final battle at the Valley of the End, who was the strongest among the Konoha 12? The answer would undoubtedly be Rock Lee. Earlier, Might Guy had shattered Yagyu's hard whirlpool water blade with a single kick using the 8 Gates' 5th gate, Gate of Limit. In this state, chakra turns into a green aura, and the user's speed becomes so fast that they can essentially run on air, similar to the moonwalk technique from the One Piece world. And when Lee used the 5th gate to unleash the Reverse Lotus, its power surpassed that of some S-rank jutsu. Just as Yagyu envied the multi-shadow clone jutsu, he also deeply envied the 8 gates. He could only imagine the sheer power boost he would gain if he, with his sage-like body, were to open the gates. Chapter 56, Lee's Changed Fate. Just like in the original story, Rock Lee's initial attacks couldn't break through Gaara's automatically defending sand. Other than Team Guy and Team 7, no one had much regard for this genin who could only use taijutsu, lacking both ninjutsu and genjutsu. However, when Lee removed his weighted gear, smashing the ground and kicking up huge clouds of dust, all those who had doubted him were left utterly speechless. Naruto, in particular, was shocked into silence. If Sasuke Uchiha had been there, his reaction likely wouldn't have been much different from Naruto's. Sasuke had been easily defeated by Lee at the Chunin exams building, and both he and Naruto had considered Lee one of their biggest threats in the exam. They had no idea that Lee had been wearing such heavy weights. The thought of Lee being able to move at such incredible speeds even Sasuke's Sharingan could barely track, while wearing those weights, made Naruto's scalp tingle. Sure enough. When Lee removed his weights and launched another attack on Gaara, his speed was so fast that 1 second he was in front of you, the next behind you, and in another moment, above your head. If not for the sharp, piercing sound of him cutting through the air as he moved, everyone might have thought Lee was using space-time jutsu instead of the body flicker technique. Bang. After several rapid movements, Lee finally broke through Gaara's sand defense, landing a punch squarely on Gaara's face. Cracks spread across Gaara's face, stunning Kankuro and Temari, who were watching from the stands. As pieces of clay crumbled away, the sinister expression hidden beneath Gaara's sand armor was revealed. This was the first time in Gaara's life that someone had managed to break through his sand armor. The casual disdain he'd been feeling instantly transformed into excitement and bloodlust. This village is full of people worth killing. Gaara became serious. As his sand pursued Lee, the latter continuously repositioned, searching for an opening to deliver a decisive blow. Soon, Lee found what he believed was Gaara's weak point and executed the front lotus. Unfortunately, what he thought would be a finishing move failed, leaving him exhausted. Determined to prove himself and desperate for victory, Lee opened the first of the 8 gates, neutralizing the side effects of the front lotus and regaining his previous speed, once again putting Gaara on the defensive. This time, Gaara had no way to fight back. Third gate, Gate of Life, open. Fourth gate, Gate of Pain, open. Lee's speed and strength continued to increase. The arena floor cracked as Lee's movements became so fast that he left trails of dust and debris in his wake. In just a few blinks of an eye, thick dust clouds filled the entire arena. Kakashi Hatake, usually relaxed, looked on in shock, his Sharingan barely able to track Lee's movements as a blur. How could someone his age open this many gates? What kind of brutal training did his body endure to withstand this level of chakra flow? Yagyu, too, felt heavy-hearted. His own weaknesses had been speed and defense, and the opponents he feared most were either incredibly fast or highly resilient. Rock Lee was a prime example of someone who could counter Yagyu. If Yagyu had been Gaara in this situation, his only options would be to use the hiding in mist technique or illusionary techniques to obscure Lee's vision or create a lake to slow Lee down. Otherwise, his fate would likely be similar to Gaara's. At this point, Lee's chakra had become so wild that it granted him immunity to genjutsu. Normal illusions wouldn't work on Lee in this state. As Lee opened more gates, his chakra would become so violent that even strong genjutsu would fail against him. That's why, against someone like Might Guy who had opened the 8 gates, even Madara Uchiha needed the truth-seeking balls, which embodied the fusion of yin-yang release, to counter him. Lee's current speed was one of the reasons Yagyu envied the 8 gates technique so much. Just opening the first gate would unlock 100% of his body's physical potential, maximizing both offense and speed. And even with just the first gate open, Yagyu could still use ninjutsu. Before obtaining absolute defense, using the higher gates could allow Yagyu to either escape from a stronger enemy or, alternatively, turn the tables and defeat them. Even the dynamic vision of the Sharingan could only capture Lee as an afterimage. For everyone else, their minds were blank, leaving them speechless. Boom. A loud explosion sent Gaara's body. We're already there. Yagyu, over here. Ino waved enthusiastically. Before Yagyu could respond, he felt a chill down his spine. Such intense killing intent. Yagyu's peripheral vision caught a glimpse of the audience seating area. He immediately knew who it was. The killing intent wasn't an illusion. It was in chakra, transmitting someone's emotions directly to Yagyu. He didn't need to guess, this was Yamanaka Inoichi, Ino's father and the head of the current generation's Ino Shikacho trio. With the entire Ino Shikacho trio present, it was only natural that their families would attend. Yagyu, realizing that he was probably being scrutinized by 2 clan leaders, straightened up and nodded politely to Ino, making his way over to Shikamaru. Feeling any pressure? Shikamaru teased. Yagyu glanced at him and smirked. I don't know about me, but you'll definitely be feeling the pressure soon enough. Hey, don't be so petty, Shikamaru's smile faltered, and he quickly added, my dad's watching from the stands, so could you at least make sure I don't lose too badly? Too late. I hold grudges, and I plan to turn you from a deer into a pig, Yagyu joked, a mischievous grin forming on his face. Chapter 60, The Strength of Choji Akimichi. Time flew by, and with only 2 minutes left until 10:30 a.m., all of the 11 participants had gathered except for Naruto and Sasuke. Ah! Just as the countdown began, a sudden shout echoed through the air. Naruto, being chased by a herd of bulls, frantically stumbled into the arena, face-planting onto the ground. This sight caused Nara, Shikamaru and others, along with many in the audience, to react with visible frustration, their faces full of exasperation. Even Yagyu couldn't help but sigh internally, thinking, as expected from the most unpredictable ninja. Once Naruto had joined the lineup, Genma Shiranui, the proctor for the 3rd exam, chewed on a senbon, glanced at his pocket watch, and then looked toward the VIP section. Seeing that both the 3rd Hokage and the 4th Kazekage had arrived, Genma addressed the 10 participants in front of him. The final round of the Chunin exams is about to begin. I am the proctor for this round, Genma Shiranui. The rules for this match are the same as the previous round, no restrictions. You can use any techniques or strategies you want. I'd also like to remind you that if your life is at risk, don't hesitate to surrender. Because unlike other proctors, I might not intervene in time to save you, even if you surrender. If you delay, I might not be able to save you in time. After giving his warning, Genma pulled out a chart and continued, the first match will be between Naruto Uzumaki, who drew number 1, and Choji Akimichi, who drew number 2. The rest of you, please head to the waiting area. Wah! Naruto exclaimed, leaning out to glance at Yagyu and the others before turning to Genma, looking flustered. Proctor, Sasuke isn't here yet. Whether Sasuke shows up or not is none of my concern, Genma replied flatly. If his match comes up and he's not here, he'll be disqualified for forfeiting. Instead of worrying about others, you'd better focus on your own match. Soon, the arena was left with just Naruto, Choji, and Genma. Naruto, you should just surrender, Choji said kindly, munching on a bag of chips. You're not strong enough to beat me. Hearing this infuriated Naruto. Pointing at Choji, he shouted, you're the one who's going down, you fat pig. Watch me wipe the floor with you. As soon as Naruto spat out the words, fat pig, the atmosphere shifted. Choji, usually calm and kind-hearted, suddenly narrowed his eyes, his gaze turning sharp. I'm mad now, Naruto, Choji growled. Naruto, surprised by the sudden change, nervously retorted, bring it on. I'm not scared of you. Sensing the rising tension between the two, Genma took a few steps back and raised his hand. The first match of the third round of the Chunin exams, Naruto Uzumaki vs Choji Akimichi, begins now. Multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu. Unlike most genin who start with cautious attacks, Naruto immediately crossed his fingers into a familiar hand sign and summoned a large group of shadow clones. Boom 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 boom. A series of popping sounds filled the air as dozens of Naruto clones materialized, white smoke swirling around them. The audience, especially the experienced ninja, widened their eyes in shock. That's the forbidden multi-shadow clone jutsu. How much chakra does this kid have to summon so many clones so easily? All right, let's get him, one of the Naruto clones yelled, and the crowd of clones charged at Choji. While the sight of so many clones was intimidating, Choji remained calm. He casually put away his bag of chips, cracked his knuckles, and with a powerful leap, his body ballooned like a giant, his head and limbs retracting as blue chakra flared around him. He began spinning rapidly in the air. Human bullet tank. As soon as Choji hit the ground, he rolled forward at incredible speed, plowing through Naruto's clones. The clones barely had time to react before they were smashed into clouds of white smoke, one after another. The ball continued to roll wildly around the arena, smashing through most of Naruto's clones in mere moments. Gulp. Naruto swallowed nervously as the feedback from his destroyed clones returned to him. Whoa. I had no idea Choji was this strong. Multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu. After Choji stopped rolling and reverted to his normal size, Naruto summoned more clones, crossing his fingers into the jutsu sign once again. With only the Shadow Clone Jutsu and his unreliable summoning jutsu, Naruto had few options for attacking. This time, he summoned over 100 clones, once again rushing toward Choji. Choji, however, remained unfazed. He quickly tied several kunai together with steel wire, wrapping them around himself before jumping back into the air and transforming once again into a giant spinning ball. Spiked human bullet tank. The enhanced version of his previous attack tore through Naruto's new wave of clones just as effectively, leaving only clouds of white smoke behind. Naruto, meanwhile, could only barely dodge the attacks. Damn it. I can't even get close to him. Naruto muttered, frustrated, as he watched the rolling ball plow through his clones. He considered whether or not to tap into the Ninetales chakra, but just then, something caught his attention. The giant ball of flesh stopped rolling. Panting heavily, Choji had reverted to his normal state, his breathing labored, either from chakra exhaustion or the prolonged spinning. Seizing the opportunity, Naruto quickly formed the familiar hand sign again. Multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu. A new wave of shadow clones materialized, and once again, they charged toward Choji. Seeing the new onslaught of clones, Choji didn't resort to his previous technique. Instead, he shouted, "Partial expansion jutsu." His arms and legs swelled to enormous sizes, stretching out like a giant's limbs, and with a series of punches and kicks, he obliterated the oncoming clones, turning them into clouds of smoke. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. Naruto shouted again. Before the smoke from the previous batch of clones could even clear, a fresh wave of shadow clones filled the arena. Naruto had figured out that Choji's chakra reserves were far inferior to his own and that Choji had no long-range attacks. He planned to overwhelm him by exhausting his chakra reserves. For a moment, it looked like Naruto's strategy might work, as Choji seemed to be at a disadvantage. Choji's in trouble. If this keeps up, he might lose, Ino commented from the sidelines. No, he won't, Shikamaru's calm voice responded. Leaning on the railing, Shikamaru confidently said, Choji is stronger than all of us. He's way more powerful than he looks. Almost as if to confirm Shikamaru's words, Choji finally spotted Naruto's real body hiding behind his clones and the lingering smoke. Glancing briefly toward the audience, Choji's eyes seemed to meet those of his father. With renewed determination, Choji reached into his pouch and pulled out a transparent box containing 3 differently colored pills. He took the green pill, one made from vegetables, and tossed it into his mouth. Boom. A burst of blue chakra erupted from Choji's body as years of stored fat instantly began burning away, releasing a massive amount of energy. In an instant, Choji vanished from sight. When he reappeared, he was right in front of the real Naruto, who stood wide-eyed in shock. With his hand enveloped in blue chakra, Choji slammed his palm into Naruto's chest. Super open hand slam. In the blink of an eye, Naruto was sent flying like an arrow shot from a bow, his body becoming a blur as it soared through the air. Choji's increased strength was so great that Naruto was hurled tens of meters before hitting the ground and tumbling across the dirt. The sudden reversal of the fight left the audience in stunned silence. Except for Shikamaru and Yagyu, who weren't surprised at all. They both knew Choji's true strength. After all, in the Ino Shikacho trio, the Akimichi clan was the powerhouse. When powered up with pills, the Akimichi were like unstoppable tanks. Their ultimate transformation, butterfly mode, was just as terrifying as the 8 Gates technique. In the original story arc where they pursued Sasuke, Choji and Neji were the only ones who managed to take down members of the Sound Four by themselves. Chapter 61, Honorable Defeat, Hayashi Hyuga's Expectations. Cough, cough, ugh. Naruto, who had rolled across the ground after being knocked back, coughed and gagged, struggling to regain his breath. Fortunately, he had only eaten a bit of ramen earlier, most of which had already been digested. Otherwise, he might have thrown up his breakfast. If not for his strong sage body and being the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, with incredible durability, Naruto could have easily been knocked out by Choji Akimichi's blow. Even now, the pain in his body was overwhelming, preventing him from standing up immediately. However, seeing Choji approaching with a pressure completely different from his usual demeanor, Naruto gritted his teeth and forced himself to his feet. He quickly formed hand seals, closing his eyes and shouting inwardly, "You stupid fox, it's time to pay your rent." Whoosh. As if responding to Naruto's call, within the mental space shared by the Jinchuriki and the tailed beast, the Nine Tails suddenly opened its red, slit pupil eyes from within its cage. In the real world, red chakra began surging from Naruto, swirling around him like a fox's tail. This scene shocked many of the shinobi in the audience. Is that? Both Hiruzen Sarutobi and Orochimaru, disguised as the 4th Kazekage, widened their eyes. Hiruzen was surprised that Naruto had begun to harness the Nine-Tails chakra, while Orochimaru was startled to realize that the 5-element seal he had placed on Naruto had been removed. Judging by Hiruzen's reaction, it was clear that the old Hokage wasn't responsible for it. Could it be, that idiot has returned? Thinking of the men who had been pursuing him for years, Orochimaru felt a sinking feeling in his heart. However, when he thought about the stage he had set for Hiruzen, he relaxed a bit. On the field, the battle resumed. Though Naruto hadn't entered the full Nine-Tails cloak form, the chakra of the Nine-Tails still caused a massive surge in his power, similar to the effect of Choji consuming the first of the 3 Akimichi pills. Naruto felt the pain in his body vanish almost instantly, replaced by a newfound, intoxicating strength. He dashed toward Choji, his body becoming a blur of red, moving at a speed he hadn't possessed before. Choji rushed forward as well, moving at an equally impressive pace. The two colorful blurs, one red, one blue, collided in the center of the arena, and Naruto and Choji began exchanging punches and kicks in a clumsy, uncoordinated taijutsu fight, full of openings. If the two were replaced with any other shinobi of similar strength, someone with more skill could easily suppress and defeat the other. But here, it looked like a fight between two novices at the academy, unrefined and chaotic. However, with the chakra flames surrounding both of them, enhancing their speed and strength, their sloppy brawl felt intense, each blow landing with raw force and passion, creating an exciting spectacle. Unfortunately, it didn't last long before the blue chakra surrounding Choji began to fade. The side effects of the first Akimichi pill kicked in, and he showed a momentary opening. Seizing the chance, Naruto kicked him, sending him flying. Choji skidded across the ground for several meters, sweat pouring from his face as he panted heavily. He reached into his ninja pouch, pulling out the transparent box that contained the remaining 2 pills. Staring at the pills, Choji hesitated. He didn't know where Naruto's sudden surge of chakra came from, but after their brief exchange, he realized that Naruto's newfound strength was only slightly below what Choji had gained from taking the first pill. Naruto's speed was the only clear advantage. If Choji took the second pill, he was confident he could defeat Naruto in a single blow. After consuming the second pill, his power would skyrocket, and he could enlarge his entire body, transforming into a human mountain capable of crushing Naruto flat. But then he remembered his father's teachings and the significance of these 3 pills. Choji took a deep breath, put the box back into his pouch, and turned to Genma Shiranui. "Proctor, I forfeit." Huh. Before Genma could announce the result, Naruto's excitement deflated like a balloon. The Ninetales chakra vanished in an instant, and Naruto, stunned, asked, "Choji, why are you giving up?" "I can't beat you, and I can't bring myself to harm my own friends," Choji thought to himself as he dragged his exhausted body toward the exit of the arena. "The winner of the first match is Naruto Uzumaki," Genma declared, watching Choji's retreating figure with a slight smile before announcing the result loudly. The crowd erupted into applause, cheers echoing through the arena. Spectators from all over the Land of Fire and even neighboring nations were thoroughly impressed with the 2 outstanding genin. The match had been intense and thrilling, and the journey had been well worth it. Even the nobles in the stands took note of Naruto's ability to summon so many clones and Choji's overwhelming power, keeping them in mind for potential future mission requests. "Choza, you have a remarkable son," Nara Shikaku and Yamanaka Inoichi praised their old friend's son, despite Choji's loss. Like them, Hiruzen Sarutobi, and other Konoha ninjas aware of the significance of the Akimichi clan's 3 pills, deeply appreciated Choji's decision to forfeit. It reminded them of the gentle nature and will of fire embodied by the Akimichi clan. This generation's heir to the butterfly transformation was truly exceptional. Naruto, however, had no idea that Choji had gone easy on him. For the first time, Naruto basked in the cheers of the crowd, waving excitedly to the audience as he ran back toward the waiting area. "Yagyu, you got this. Knock Shikamaru down hard. Hey, I'm standing right next to you, remember? We're on the same team. Yagyu-kun, good luck." With cheers of encouragement from Ino and Hinata, Yagyu and Nara Shikamaru walked out from the tunnel and into the spotlight, standing across from each other beside Genma. "Father, is that the boy who's my sister's teammate?" Hanabi, seated next to Hayashi Hyuga in the audience, curiously asked. "The one who defeated Niji?" "Yes," Hayashi replied, his face expressionless, but his heart was filled with complex emotions. Like Yamanaka Inoichi and Hiruzen Sarutobi, Hayashi had been aware of Yagyu for many years. At first, when Ino frequently visited and invited Hinata to hang out, Hayashi didn't think much of it. But as he noticed that every time Hinata returned, she would head straight to the dojo to train, practicing advanced fundamentals only taught to genin, Hayashi grew suspicious. One day, he decided to follow her and discovered Yagyu. As an adult, Hayashi quickly saw through Hinata's growing feelings for Yagyu. However, he didn't stop Hinata from spending time with Yagyu and his friends, as he realized that Yagyu's presence gave Hinata the motivation to train harder. Moreover, Yagyu was a prodigy, a civilian genius who managed to retain the title of top student year after year among an exceptionally gifted generation. His talent and potential were undeniable. If Yagyu's excellence continued to grow, and if Hinata truly loved him, Hayashi wouldn't mind allowing Yagyu to marry into the Hyuga clan. Especially since, as Hanabi grew, Hayashi realized her talent and personality made her a more suitable successor for the Hyuga clan than Hinata. When the time came to make a decision, Hayashi was willing to let Yagyu join the Hyuga clan as a means of compensating his eldest daughter. But Yagyu's recent revelation, that he was a descendant of the Senju clan, changed everything. Mastering powerful genjutsu and water release techniques at such a young age, Yagyu was like a young version of the second Hokage, Tobirama. This was truly incredible. Such lineage and talent made Yagyu a prime candidate for the future Hokage. If Yagyu became Hokage one day, Hayashi would have the perfect reason to let Hinata marry him, ensuring that neither of his daughters would have to bear the burden of the caged bird seal. Because of this, Hayashi now had high hopes and great expectations for Yagyu. He wasn't here today just to support Hinata, he was here for Yagyu. Chapter 62, The Phantom Body Flicker Technique. Since we've known each other, this seems to be our first time facing off in a match, doesn't it? Yagyu said with a smile, raising 2 fingers in front of him as he faced Nara Shikamaru. Yeah, sorry for not matching up to you sooner. My grades were too poor, Shikamaru replied, scratching his head with one hand while also raising 2 fingers with the other. Upon closer look, his usual lazy, fish-like eyes had sharpened into a serious gaze. Yagyu was the unbeatable, final boss. This was a consensus shared by all the students from the 60th class of the Ninja Academy. If it were someone else, Sasuke, Uchiha or Naruto, losing would make them feel incredibly frustrated. But losing to Yagyu, well, even Sasuke and Naruto had gotten used to it over the past 6 years. As one of the first people to realize that Yagyu was hiding his true power, Shikamaru knew very well that he wasn't on Yagyu's level. However, his brain told him that if Yagyu only had those abilities, there might still be a chance for him to win. After all, the Nara clan's shadow imitation technique wasn't to be underestimated. With a field this large, no matter how much chakra Yagyu had or how skilled he was in water release, there was no way he could flood the entire area. As long as Shikamaru could catch him in his shadow, victory would be his. Over the past few days, Shikamaru had been pondering how to trap Yagyu and had come up with more than a dozen plans. Now, it was time to put them into action. Seeing that both had made the seal of confrontation, Genma Shiranui raised his arm again and shouted, "Second round match, Yagyu vs Nara Shikamaru. Begin." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Shikamaru immediately jumped back, putting distance between himself and Yagyu. While still in midair, he reached into his ninja pouch, pulling out 3 black spheres and tossing them toward Yagyu. The spheres landed in front of Yagyu and to his left and right, then exploded into clouds of smoke that enveloped him. As soon as he landed, Shikamaru formed hand seals, and black shadows began spreading from his feet, splitting into several snake-like tendrils that slithered quickly toward the smoke. What no one saw was that within the white smoke, a faint red powder briefly appeared before vanishing. Suddenly, 3 Yagyus burst out of the smoke, hands behind their backs in the typical ninja running stance, rushing toward Shikamaru. As the shadows extended toward them, the 3 Yagyus spread out in a fan formation, moving to surround Shikamaru. None of them showed any intent to use water release for a ranged attack. Shikamaru didn't have time to think about why Yagyu wasn't using long-range attacks. Seeing the 3 Yagyus split up, he immediately directed his shadow toward the closest one, directly in front of him. In the next moment, his pupils shrank. He had expected that Yagyu would use a body flicker to dodge the shadow, but instead, Yagyu ignored the encroaching shadow and kept rushing toward him. As Shikamaru started to glance at the other 2 Yagyus out of the corner of his eye, trying to determine which was the real one, his shadow touched the Yagyu in front of him. But instead of freezing in place or dispersing into a puff of smoke, the shadow passed right through him. Yagyu kept coming. Wait, is this a basic clone technique? Shikamaru raised an eyebrow, surprised that Yagyu would use such a low-level move. But then, his expression shifted. No, this isn't the clone technique, it's an illusion. The clone technique and shadow clone technique are similar. Without specialized techniques like the Byakugan or certain sensory skills, it's difficult to tell the two apart with the naked eye. You can figure it out by making contact with them. The clone technique creates illusions that vanish upon contact, much like a mirage in the desert. Shadow clones, on the other hand, are physical and even the Byakugan can't see through them. If this Yagyu was just an illusion clone, it should have disappeared as soon as it was touched by the shadow. But it didn't. It kept running toward Shikamaru. Shikamaru quickly disrupted his chakra flow, trying to break free of Yagyu's illusion. But even after that, Yagyu didn't disappear. He was already in front of Shikamaru, his fist heading straight for his face. In a split-second reaction, Shikamaru cancelled his shadow imitation technique and pulled out a kunai, swinging it at Yagyu. As expected, the kunai in Shikamaru's arm passed right through Yagyu's body. Yet, the illusionary clone didn't vanish, and Yagyu's punch landed squarely on Shikamaru's face. Boom. The force of the punch distorted Shikamaru's face like a wave, showing just how strong Yagyu's blow had been. In the next instant, Shikamaru was sent flying more than 10 meters, crashing to the ground. Lying there, Shikamaru was utterly dumbfounded, his normally sharp mind completely blank. In the audience, many shinobi stood up in astonishment. Even Hiruzen Sarutobi and Orochimaru, disguised as the fourth Kazekage, were visibly shocked, almost rising from their seats. That's the phantom body flicker technique. Seriously? Is that really the phantom body flicker? How is this possible? He doesn't have a Sharingan. How could he have mastered the phantom body flicker? Incredible. His skill in both body flicker and genjutsu must be extraordinary to have mastered Shirsue's secret technique. The shinobi in the audience were in an uproar, unable to believe what they had just seen. Many younger ninjas and even civilians nearby looked on in confusion, not understanding the significance of what had just happened. But their reactions were understandable, as the Uchiha clan had been wiped out years ago. Everyone knew that during the Third Great Ninja War, two prodigies emerged from the Konoha side. One was Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, whose mastery of the Flying Thunder God technique earned him the moniker, the Yellow Flash. The other was Uchiha Shirsue, a ninja whose long-distance kills using his unmatched genjutsu could only be spotted from afar by the Byakugan. Shirsue earned the title, Shirsue of the Body Flicker. Just like how Minato was renowned for the Flying Thunder God technique, Shirsue's Shirsue of the Body Flicker title came from his own invention, the Phantom Body Flicker technique. The concept behind it was simple. Shirsue combined the Sharingan's genjutsu with the standard body flicker and clone techniques. But despite its simplicity, no one else in the entire Uchiha clan, or even the larger ninja world, had ever been able to replicate Shirsue's technique. The phantom body flicker created one or more illusion clones using the E-rank clone technique, which would attack enemies alongside Shirsue himself. Though these clones were mere illusions that should disappear upon contact, Shirsue's genjutsu-infused clones didn't vanish. When enemies attacked what they believed to be Shirsue's clone and let down their guard, thinking it was just a mirage, Shirsue would then use the body flicker to replace the clone, making the phantom clone become his real body. And just as easily, that real body could once again become an illusion. Because of this, Shirsue's enemies never knew which form was his real body and were forced to defend against every attack, lest an illusion turn into a lethal blow. Countless people had fallen to Shirsue's phantom body flicker technique. With a technique as powerful and terrifying as the Flying Thunder God, Shirsue had become renowned throughout the ninja world, becoming the strongest Uchiha of his generation by the time he was only in his teens. But after Shirsue's death, the phantom body flicker technique, along with the Flying Thunder God, became the stuff of legend. Now, seeing this technique reappear was enough to shock any shinobi who knew of Shirsue's legacy. Chapter 63, This is just a shadow clone. That's right, Yagyu was using the phantom body flicker technique. After obtaining the Thunder Blade, Kiba, Yagyu had been using the blade to practice lightning release chakra nature transformation. After more than a month of work, he finally mastered the lightning release chakra stimulation technique, and his speed was now on par with Lee when he took off his weights. At first, Yagyu only intended to increase his speed. But one day, while sparring in an unrestricted match with Karen using shadow clones, he watched his clone use the red eye illusion technique combined with the body flicker technique to toy with Karen. That's when inspiration struck. He thought of Shirsue Uchiha's phantom body flicker technique. In Yagyu's eyes, this technique was no less formidable in one-on-one combat than the Flying Thunder God technique or Kamui's intangibility. However, mastering this technique required both exceptional proficiency in illusions and body flicker techniques. Most importantly, the illusion technique needed to be one that didn't require hand seals. After mastering the lightning release chakra stimulation technique, Yagyu now met the conditions to train in the phantom body flicker technique. Although his skill in Sharingan illusions couldn't match Shisui Uchiha's, and he couldn't yet create illusionary clones that wouldn't disperse, Yagyu didn't need the Sharingan to create such clones. He could achieve this with two techniques, the Red Eye illusion and the Naruto clone technique he learned from Kurina Yui. Both of these are illusion-based clone techniques. The former can't even be detected by the Byakugan, while the latter can be enhanced with the Sharingan. Moreover, these two illusion clone techniques can be merged. After some experimentation, Yagyu confirmed that this was indeed possible. Thus, he began developing the phantom body flicker technique using the Red Eye illusion and Naruto clone techniques. After some effort, he finally managed to master the basics of this ninjutsu body flicker illusion hybrid technique a few days before the Chunin exams. Unless his opponent had illusion proficiency and body flicker speed far above his, the phantom body flicker technique would be a nightmare for them. Nara Shikamaru was the perfect example. I give up. Realizing the swelling on the left side of his face, Shikamaru looked at the three Yagyus approaching him. Without hesitation, he raised his hand and surrendered. Yagyu's newly revealed ability rendered all of Shikamaru's strategies from the past month useless. Even if Yagyu held back, Shikamaru didn't know how many beatings it would take to figure out this technique and come up with a plan. Moreover, there was no guarantee that Yagyu didn't have other tricks up his sleeve. What if, after enduring so many beatings and finally understanding this technique, Yagyu suddenly revealed a new ability? Wouldn't that make all the suffering pointless? Since defeat was inevitable, Shikamaru decisively chose the path of least resistance. Even Sasuke Uchiha had been losing to Yagyu for 6 years, losing to him wasn't something to be ashamed of. The battle is over. The winner is Yagyu. Genma Shiranui loudly declared the result, looking at Yagyu with astonishment in his eyes. This Senju heir, who had been making waves among the Jonin circle recently, not only possessed mastery of water release techniques but had been hiding such a trump card as well. Whoosh! Almost immediately after Genma announced the result, a blue glow flickered from Shikamaru's body. The light flew out from his body, forming a floating blue orb beside him. Yagyu walked over to Shikamaru, extended his hand with a smile, and said, "Thanks for the match, Shikamaru. You're really something, always hiding your true strength." Shikamaru muttered, holding back the word sneaky from slipping out as he grabbed Yagyu's hand and stood up. Deep inside, he felt a sense of pity for Sasuke and Naruto. Being born in the same generation as a monster like Yagyu was both a blessing and a curse for them. Once Yagyu fully matured, no matter what major events occurred, there would always be a towering figure standing tall. At the same time, they would only be left chasing after his shadow, perhaps never even seeing his back. The thought alone made Shikamaru feel a sense of helplessness and gloom. After completing the seal of reconciliation, Yagyu and Shikamaru headed toward the contestant tunnel. At the same time, the floating blue orb began to trigger its automatic collection sequence. However, instead of flying toward Yagyu, it floated higher into the air, heading toward a specific direction in Konoha. This meant that the Yagyu who had just walked into the tunnel with Shikamaru was not the real Yagyu, but a shadow clone. Good luck, Ino, Hinata. You've got this. Back at the contestant stands, Yagyu's shadow clone cheered on the two girls. Hinata, don't go too hard on me. I don't want to embarrass myself too much in front of my father. Let's do our best together, Ino. The two close friends walked hand in hand toward the battlefield. Once they exited the contestant tunnel, their expressions became serious. Standing side by side next to Genma Shiranui, they raised two fingers to form the seal of confrontation. Third match, Yamanaka Ino vs Hyuga Hinata. Begin. At Genma's command, the friendly duel between Hinata and Ino began. Just like the match between Ino and Sakura, the two started by using ninja tools and smoke bombs to test each other out. Ino tried to use the smoke to find an opportunity to use her mind transfer jutsu. But even Sakura didn't give Ino the chance to cast her jutsu, let alone Hinata with her Byakugan. With her Byakugan activated, Hinata immediately locked onto Ino's position and rushed at her. Ino tried to repel Hinata by throwing ninja tools, but Hinata didn't dodge or counter with her own tools. Instead, she elegantly caught all of Ino's projectiles, either by inserting her fingers through the holes in the shuriken or by pinching the handles of the kunai between her fingers. The sight left Ino stunned. This was the prowess of the Hyuga clan's Byakugan and gentle fist technique. After catching all of Ino's tools, Hinata continued her charge and quickly closed the distance. What followed was a hand-to-hand combat sequence that the two girls had practiced countless times over the years. In taijutsu duels, Ino and Sakura often had wins and losses, but against Hinata, they had never won, not even once. Today was no different. Faced with Hinata's ability to see her chakra pathways, Ino couldn't even perform the basic three-body technique or body flicker without Hinata predicting and interrupting her moves. Hinata didn't humiliate Ino, though. At first, she only used basic taijutsu. But after 30 exchanges, Hinata switched styles and began using her gentle fist, striking a chakra point on Ino's arm, causing it to go numb and limp. In just a few more moves, Hinata had disabled Ino. The match is over. The winner is Hyuga Hinata. After Hinata subdued Ino, Genma immediately announced the result. As expected, I couldn't beat you. Ino accepted Hinata's extended hand and stood up, sighing, Hinata, you're getting stronger and stronger. No, I only won because of an elemental advantage. Back to her shy demeanor after the match, Hinata gently shook her head and raised 2 fingers in the seal of reconciliation. Thanks for the match, Ino. Hee, thanks for the match. With the seal of reconciliation complete, the two girls returned to being close friends. Ino held Hinata's hand as they walked back toward the contestant tunnel. Seeing their friendly interaction, the audience suddenly realized that they were close friends. Yamanaka Inoichi and Hyuga Hayashi both nodded in approval. Hayashi, in particular, was very pleased with Hinata's strength and social connections. His only dissatisfaction was that Hinata's personality outside of battle was far too different from her battle demeanor. Her usual gentle nature didn't suit the role of a leader. If she had a personality more like Hanabi's, then with her friendship with the heir of the Yamanaka clan, Hinata would be the perfect candidate to inherit the Hyuga clan's leadership. After all, being friends with the Yamanaka heir meant being allied with the entire Ino-Shikacho trio. Once Hinata became the clan head, the Hyuga clan would be allied with the 3 great families. At that point, not even Konoha's higher-ups would dare to suppress the Hyuga clan. Chapter 64, The Konoha Crush Plan, Yagyu begins to act. After the battle between Hinata and Ino ended, the 3rd exam of the Chunin exams finally reached its main event. Gaara vs. Sasuke Uchiha. Many spectators in the stands had come specifically to watch Sasuke Uchiha fight. These spectators included people from other parts of the Land of Fire, neighboring countries, and even many of Konoha's own villagers. Ironically, back when the Uchiha clan was still around, the people of Konoha despised and rejected them. This was due to the Uchiha police force's strict and sometimes overbearing nature, often causing friction with the villagers. But now, with the Uchiha clan gone, they were praised and revered. People were even willing to pay large sums of money for tickets to see Sasuke fight. It's fortunate there wasn't a war going on, or Konoha's civilians and shinobi, even the high-ranking officials, would miss the Uchiha clan even more. After all, it was widely known in the shinobi world that the Sharingan's one-on-one prowess was nearly unbeatable. Whoosh! Gaara emerged from the contestant tunnel, arms crossed as he stepped into the arena, his expressionless face clearly hidden beneath the defense of his sand armor. As Genma Shiranui checked his watch, preparing to declare Sasuke Uchiha disqualified due to his absence, a gust of wind carrying a few falling leaves suddenly appeared in the arena. In the next moment, 2 figures appeared before everyone's eyes. These 2 were none other than Kakashi Hatake and Sasuke Uchiha. Looks like we made it in time. We're not late, are we? Kakashi, striking a pose with his Aika Aika Paradise book in hand, asked Genma Shiranui. Genma rolled his eyes. You were just a few seconds away from your student being disqualified. You really should work on your habit of always being late. It was clear from Genma's tone that he was on familiar terms with Kakashi, as he had once been one of the 4th Hokage's personal guards. As long as we're not late, Kakashi replied, putting away his book. He then turned to Sasuke, who had a few white bandages on his body but was brimming with confidence. I've taught you all I can. Now it's up to you to show what you've got, Sasuke. With those words, Kakashi vanished with a body flicker. So, you're my opponent. Sasuke looked at Gaara, who had left a strong impression on him a month ago. With an air of confidence, he smiled and said, it's great that you're my first opponent. Before I face Yagyu, I'll use you as a warm-up. Much like in the original story, Sasuke had grown cocky after his recent power-up. Since he hadn't seen the battle between Lee and Gaara, and aside from Yagyu, whom he had never beaten, he didn't take anyone else seriously. Gaara, on the other hand, remained silent, his expression unchanged under the protection of his sand armor. Just like Sasuke, Gaara didn't take his opponent seriously either. In Gaara's mind, Sasuke's performance in the previous round had been too weak. If that was the full extent of his power, Sasuke wouldn't even be able to break through his automatic sand defense. Currently, Gaara only regarded two opponents as worthy, the one who had fought him, Lee, and the one who had mastered water release and displayed powerful body flicker techniques and illusions, Yagyu. As for Sasuke Uchiha, Gaara had almost forgotten his name. Seeing that both contestants were ready, Genma Shiranui took a few steps back and raised his hand. The third match, Sasuke Uchiha vs Gaara, begin. Whoosh. Sasuke didn't bother testing his opponent with tools, he immediately used the body flicker technique and disappeared. In the blink of an eye, he reappeared at Gaara's right side, launching a punch aimed at Gaara's face. Gaara's sand automatically rose to defend, but it failed to block Sasuke's punch. However, this attack was just a feint. In the next moment, Sasuke reappeared on Gaara's other side and threw another punch. Sasuke's speed was so fast that Gaara's automatic sand defense barely kept up, narrowly managing to block the second punch. Both Gaara, whose face was covered by the sand armor, and the others watching from the stands, including Sakura and Lee, were stunned. They were especially shocked because the speed and taijutsu techniques Sasuke was now displaying were nearly identical to the ones Lee had used a month ago after removing his weights. Watching Sasuke continually shift positions and attack Gaara, trying to break through his sand defense, Lee, now fully healed and sitting in the audience after being eliminated in the previous round, couldn't help but feel a wave of emotion. Only he knew how much effort it had taken to achieve that kind of speed. His bandaged arms and legs bore the scars of his grueling training, scars that seemed like they would never fade. Yet Sasuke had gained the same results in just a month. This was the difference between ordinary people and geniuses. It felt like they lived in completely different worlds. Lee clenched his fists, feeling a deep sense of bitterness. Bang! At that moment, Sasuke broke through Gaara's sand defense and shattered the sand armor on Gaara's face with a punch. Since Gaara had never been touched in battle, his experience in taijutsu was nearly non-existent. Fearing that Sasuke might be able to use techniques as devastating as Lee's, Gaara hastily covered himself entirely in sand, forming a massive sand sphere. Inside the sphere, Gaara finally felt secure and used his third eye to control the sand from within to attack Sasuke. Fire release, great fireball technique. Outside the sand sphere, Sasuke tried to break through Gaara's defense with a fire release attack. However, after the fireball exploded, the sand sphere remained unharmed. Sasuke wasn't discouraged. Instead, a sly smile appeared on his face. He stopped wasting chakra and turned to run up the tall wall of the arena. Gathering chakra in his feet, Sasuke climbed the wall like a lizard and then formed hand seals. Crackle, crackle. The sound of 1,000 birds chirping filled the air as Sasuke's right hand emitted a blue-white ball of lightning. Gripping the lightning in his palm, he charged downward. As he descended, Sasuke's hand was so close to the wall that the crackling lightning left a deep, gouged trail along the surface. Chidori. Sasuke charged toward the sand sphere, his lightning-covered hand piercing through the formidable defense. Ah! A scream echoed from inside the sphere. When Sasuke withdrew his arm, it was stained with blood. Seeing this, Yagyu's shadow clone, along with many others in the audience, narrowed their eyes. Hidden in the back of the stands, disguised as a member of the Leaf Zumbu, Kabuto Yakushi formed hand seals and softly whispered, "Genjutsu, Temple of Nirvana technique." Countless white illusionary feathers began to fall from the sky like snowflakes. The spectators who had been cheering for Sasuke's impressive performance and feeling satisfied with their tickets quickly became captivated by the feathers. As they stared at the feathers, their eyelids grew heavy, and their once excited expressions turned drowsy. Within moments, all the civilians and nobles had fallen asleep. Even some of the lower-ranked shinobi were affected. When the feathers touched those who had fallen asleep, they instantly dissipated. The people touched by the feathers were plunged into a deep slumber, unlikely to wake even if beaten or torn apart. It's a large-scale genjutsu. We're under attack. Only those with in-release chakra or those who reacted quickly and were strong enough managed to resist the effects of the feathers. These individuals quickly formed hand seals to dispel the invading in chakra. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of rushing wind filled the air as figures leaped from the stands. These were sound ninjas disguised as civilians. As they discarded their disguises, they immediately began fighting the leaf shinobi in the stands, with many civilians caught in the crossfire. Over at the VIP section, Orochimaru, disguised as the fourth Kazekage, had already taken Sarutobi Hiruzen hostage and leaped onto the rooftop. A transparent purple barrier quickly rose, surrounding the rooftop. The battle between master and student was about to begin. Stop pretending, those two sand ninjas have already fled. It's just us here. Yagyu's shadow clone kicked the lying Shikamaru. Go wake up Naruto and Choji and help the others. This is such a hassle. This kind of situation is way out of our league as genin. Shikamaru scratched his head and reluctantly stood up. While Yagyu's shadow clone was organizing the genin in the contestants' area, chaos had already erupted in the village outside the arena. The sound ninjas in the arena were just a small fraction of the force. The main army, along with the sand ninjas, was outside. As soon as the signal was given, they began wreaking havoc throughout Konoha. Some sound ninjas scattered around the village, taking out scrolls and blood vials to summon giant snakes from Ryuchi Cave. The surprise attack from the sound and sand forces caught Konoha off guard. However, thanks to the guidance of the special Jonin, the village's shinobi quickly followed emergency protocols. Some banded together to repel the attackers, while others escorted civilians to the shelters. Due to the lack of manpower, the Umbu, who were originally stationed at the Hokage building, also left to support the village's defense efforts. In no time, the Hokage building was left with far fewer guards. No one noticed the cloaked figure wearing a white mask who had quietly snuck into the Hokage building. That figure was none other than Yagyu's real body. After using the shadow clone jutsu at home, Yagyu had sent his clone to the exam while his real body donned a cloak and mask. Using the red eye illusion to hide himself, Yagyu watched the match from afar while searching for his target inside the Hokage building with his far sight and X-ray vision. Now, with both his red eye and Kagura's mind eye active, Yagyu had a complete view of both the inside and outside of the Hokage building, as well as his target, all from a godlike perspective. Chapter 65, Acquiring Would Release, Susanoo and the Great Buddha, One Man Destroys Four Nations. After sneaking into the Hokage's office building, Yagyu headed straight for the Forbidden Jutsu Archive. This area not only housed a large collection of ninja technique scrolls but was also where the Scroll of Seals was kept. However, if you observed closely, you'd notice that while Yagyu appeared to be heading toward the Forbidden Jutsu Archive, he wasn't hiding his presence with his red eye illusions. Instead, he walked openly through the Hokage building, as if deliberately drawing attention to himself. As Yagyu approached the Forbidden Jutsu Archive, a faint smile curled beneath his mask. The next moment, the ground beneath him gave way, transforming into a swamp, sealing off Yagyu's body flicker technique. Before he could react, the mud under his feet suddenly collapsed, dragging him downward like quicksand. Yagyu's perspective flipped as if he were falling. Below him was a seemingly bottomless pit, with wooden walls forming its perimeter. Before long, Yagyu landed at the bottom of the pit. Beneath the Hokage building, there was a vast underground base. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of rushing air filled his ears as several massive wooden vines, like serpents, struck at him. Even the ground beneath his feet sprouted vine-like tendrils attempting to bind him. However, Yagyu had already seen through the incoming attack with his red eye. A simple body flicker allowed him to evade the vines with ease. In his heightened perspective, Yagyu could see the dim underground base, and not far away stood a figure wearing a black cloak and a cat-faced mask. This was the person Yagyu had been targeting, none other than Tenzo, also known as Yamato in the original Shippuden series, the future leader of the new Team 7. Oh no, wait, he's still called Tenzo right now. Would release, advent of a world of flowering trees. Seeing that his initial would-release attack had failed, Tenzo didn't bother questioning who Yagyu was. Instead, he immediately used a larger-scale would-release technique to gain the upper hand in the terrain. Saplings burst from the ground, rapidly growing into towering trees over 10 meters high, transforming the underground base into a miniature forest. Large amounts of wooden tendrils grew to seal the opening in the ceiling, which connected to the Hokage building above. Clearly, Tenzo intended to trap Yagyu in the underground base, giving him no chance to escape. While swiftly dodging the tendrils trying to bind him as they grew from the trees, Yagyu stood atop a tree branch, concealed within the sleeves of his cloak. With a quick series of single-handed hand seals, a thick white mist began to fill the air. In a few seconds, the dense fog turned the forest into a foggy woodland. Tenzo, who had previously been able to sense his surroundings through his would-release connection, now found only a vague outline of a figure in the mist. This is the hidden mist jutsu. Tenzo's pupils contracted under his mask. Isn't he supposed to be from the Sound or Sand villages? Or is this just a cover for his true identity? Meanwhile, Tenzo wasn't idle, quickly forming his own hand seals, would release, silent strangle jutsu. In an instant, yellowing tree branches extended from the surrounding trees like serpents or whips, lashing out to bind and strike Yagyu. Crackle, crackle, crackle. The sound of electricity filled the air as arcs of blue-white lightning flickered around Yagyu's body. Whoosh! Yagyu's figure disappeared, leaving only the sound of the air being pierced behind. He had activated a technique he had learned from Kurosuke Raiga, ninja art, lightning armor. Originally, this technique required Raiga's twin swords to use, but after mastering lightning-style chakra control, Yagyu could now use it at will. Yagyu even discovered that by combining this offensive and defensive lightning jutsu with the lightning chakra stimulation method, his speed could instantly jump to maximum, effectively creating his own version of the lightning chakra mode. How is this possible? Tenzo's expression changed drastically beneath his mask. His senses were suddenly overwhelmed by numerous moving figures in the mist, and none of them seemed to be mere clones. These figures quickly disrupted his perception, causing Tenzo to lose track of the mysterious intruder. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of needles cutting through the air filled Tenzo's ears as a rain of senbon needles descended upon him. In the thick mist, Yagyu used his red-eye illusions to interfere with Tenzo's senses while deploying shadow clones to surround him. Together, they unleashed a barrage of ice needles created through his ice release technique, formed by mixing his chakra. Wood release, wood locking wall. Reacting swiftly, Tenzo summoned several wooden vines to form a cocoon-like shield around himself, blocking the oncoming ice senbon. Before long, the cocoon was riddled with holes, resembling a spiky hedgehog. Seeing this, a small smile appeared on Yagyu's face. One of his shadow clones, hiding nearby, quickly made hand signs, sending out a shadowy tendril. It was the shadow imitation technique, an ability Yagyu had acquired from his fight with Shikamaru during the earlier rounds of the exams. That unexpected reward had led Yagyu to abandon the plan he'd spent a month preparing, opting instead to use this surprise ability to ambush Tenzo. The combination of the hidden mist jutsu and red-eye illusions was a terrifying combination, one that had even fooled the likes of Naruto and Guy's team in the original series, rendering Niji's Byakugan ineffective. Lacking an advanced sensory technique like the Kagura's Mind Eye or the Byakugan, Tenzo didn't notice the shadow creeping toward him. After defending against all the ice senbon, Tenzo didn't immediately dispel his wooden shield. Only after sensing that no one was nearby did he cautiously release the shield, preparing to use body flicker to change positions. Ding, ding. Suddenly, the faint sound of bells filled the air. Just as Tenzo prepared to move, he found himself frozen in place. A paralysis jutsu. Gritting his teeth, Tenzo tried to disrupt the flow of chakra in his body. But the next second, his body truly became immobilized. Due to the mist's cover, Tenzo failed to see the black shadow extending under his feet, robbing him of control over his body. Whoosh! With a sharp sound of electricity, a lightning-wreathed figure darted toward Tenzo. Yagyu's hand, glowing with lightning, cold energy, and blue chakra, struck a precise pressure point on Tenzo's body. Thud! Tenzo coughed up blood and immediately lost consciousness. That strike was known as the shock point strike. In Boruto, Himawari had used this technique to knock out Naruto, making him miss the 7th Hokage's inauguration ceremony. After acquiring the red eye, Yagyu had begun studying human pressure points, even asking Hinata for advice under the guise of developing medical ninjutsu. He learned which pressure points would induce unconsciousness. Since the technique required pinpoint accuracy, it was only effective if the target was immobilized. Until now, Yagyu had never used it. After all, if you could immobilize your opponent, why bother using a knockout technique when you could just kill them with a water release, hard whirlpool slash? However, Yagyu didn't want to kill Tenzo, so the shock point strike was the best option. Flash. The moment Tenzo lost consciousness, a red glow emitted from his body. Within seconds, a red beam of light emerged, coalescing into a floating red orb nearby. It dropped on the first try. Looks like my luck's holding up. As the mist dissipated, Yagyu's true body emerged from the forest, smiling in satisfaction at the floating red orb. This was the advantage of having a rich arsenal. Yagyu's original plan had been to expose his Sharingan and water release techniques, using ice release as a cover for his identity. However, after obtaining the shadow imitation technique from Shikamaru, Yagyu quickly changed his plan, choosing to continue hiding his Sharingan and devising a new strategy for the shadow imitation. The sound of bells had come from a sound-based genjutsu Yagyu had modified after obtaining the technique from Kin of the Sound 4. The technique had been adapted into a bell-triggered paralysis jutsu. After all, even in the mist, Yagyu needed to activate either the Byakugan, Red Eye, or Kagura's Mind Eye to see Tenzo. If he had relied on his Sharingan like Kakashi did against Zabuza, Tenzo would have remained invisible. Unable to locate Tenzo, Yagyu wouldn't have been able to use the paralysis jutsu or other binding techniques. Shikamaru's shadow imitation technique had come at just the right time, allowing Yagyu to avoid exposing his Sharingan or water release. Aside from using the hidden mist jutsu and red eye illusions, Yagyu hadn't needed to make any moves himself. His shadow clone had done the work of immobilizing and knocking out Tenzo. Thanks to the genius of shadow clone jutsu, Yagyu had succeeded in one attempt. Soon, the red orb was automatically collected, floating toward Yagyu. As it merged into his body, Yagyu's eyes gleamed with excitement. Once the orb was fully absorbed, Yagyu immediately summoned his virtual panel to check the highest rarity red item occupying the first slot. Spatial inventory, bloodline limit, would release, red. The bloodline limit he had coveted for so long was finally his. Yagyu clenched his fist, nearly shouting aloud in excitement. In Yagyu's mind, no bloodline limit below the level of the Six Paths could compare to would release in terms of its synergy with the Sage of Six Paths body. If Naruto had possessed would release, he wouldn't have suffered the fate he did after losing Kurama in Boruto. With would release and Sage mode, Naruto would still be among the strongest in the ninja world. Even Tenzo, a mere would release experiment, could only wield about 20% of Hashirama Senju's power. But once Yagyu's Sage of Six Paths body fully matured and he learned Sage mode, his would release would have the full 100% power of Hashirama. And if he could master all of Hashirama's would release techniques, Yagyu would surpass even the most powerful shinobi below the Six Paths, becoming a near-invincible figure. When Yagyu's Sharingan evolved into the Mangekyo Sharingan, and he could summon the complete body Susanoo, he would finally bring to life the legendary meme from his previous life. Susanoo on top of the Great Buddha, one man destroys 4 nations. Chapter 66, The True Prince of Konoha, I'll Take It All. After the initial excitement, Yagyu wasted no time in fusing with the would release bloodline. As the red beam flew out from his spatial inventory and merged into his body, the words would release immediately appeared in the bloodline section of his virtual panel. This became Yagyu's 5th bloodline limit, following the Sharingan, Red Eye, Byakugan, and Ice Release. After fusing with the would release bloodline, Yagyu raised his hand, converting his chakra into would release chakra, a combination of water style and earth style chakra. A small green branch quickly sprouted from his palm, growing into a tiny sapling. Then, Yagyu stomped his foot, infusing the ground with his chakra, now merged with yang release, causing a vibrant, life-filled green vine to emerge from the earth. The bright green vine stood in stark contrast to the dull yellow vines produced by Tenzo's would release. Seeing this, Yagyu smiled slightly, then cut the vine into sections and stored them in his spatial inventory. After completing this, Yagyu hoisted the unconscious Tenzo over his shoulder, dispelled the wooden vines blocking the hole to the Hokage building, and body flickered back into the corridor. With both his red eye and Kagura's mind eye active, Yagyu was fully aware of the layout of the Hokage building. Confidently, he made his way to the forbidden jutsu library, pushing the door open. Rows of bookshelves filled with scrolls greeted him. In the original story, Orochimaru had obtained the 8-headed serpent jutsu and the impure world reincarnation technique from this very place. Such an important location, of course, had a guard. And that guard was none other than the most skilled member of the ANBU, Tenzo. Yagyu had deliberately come to the forbidden jutsu library to attract Tenzo's attention. His goal was not only to extract the would-release bloodline from Tenzo but also to raid the library and expand his arsenal of techniques. However, Yagyu didn't simply collect the jutsu scrolls into his inventory. These scrolls were part of Konoha's heritage, after all. Yagyu's plan was to fully embrace his identity as a descendant of the Senju clan. By obtaining would-release from Tenzo, he would solidify his status as a legitimate heir of the Senju lineage, allowing him to openly use would-release techniques. Once Yagyu wielded would-release, no one would doubt his heritage, even if he denied being a Senju. He would shed his identity as a mere civilian orphan and become a true descendant of Konoha's founding clan. With that status and position, no obstacle would remain to stop him from being with Hinata and the other girls. The image of the Santa Claus figure that had flashed through his mind 6 years ago would finally come true. He could shout it proudly, "I'll take it all." As a legitimate heir of Konoha, once Hiruzen Sarutobi passed and Tsunade took the reins, Yagyu would be the prince of Konoha. Whether it was Tenzo or the various ninja clans, they would all become his supporters. This was why Yagyu had chosen not to reveal his important abilities or kill Tenzo. He needed the scrolls stored here but wouldn't steal them. Found it. Using his red eye's X-ray vision, Yagyu quickly flipped through the scrolls on the shelf until he found a purple scroll. The seal on the scroll bore a large character, wood. This was the scroll containing would-release techniques, the very scroll Danzo had given to Tenzo when he still went by the codename A. Placing Tenzo on the ground, Yagyu unrolled the scroll and inspected the would-release techniques recorded within. Would clone, would transformation, would substitution. Would release, advent of a world of flowering trees. Would release, would dragon, would golem. From basic techniques like wood clones to high-level jutsu like the wood dragon, wood golem, and the advent of a world of flowering trees, the iconic, 3 ultimate techniques that made Hashirama Senju, the god of shinobi, invincible against Madara Uchiha. However, one technique was notably absent, would release, true several thousand hands, the ultimate would release technique that even Hashirama could only use in Sage mode. This jutsu was one of only 2 officially recognized SSS-ranked techniques. The other was truth-seeking orbs, formed from the fusion of yin-yang and all 5 elemental releases. Though not a bloodline limit like the Rinnegan or Tenseigan, it was classified as a super technique. Yagyu frowned and muttered to himself, did they not have time to leave it behind, or was it deliberately left out? After a few seconds, Yagyu realized the reason. No wonder Danzo had only mentioned the flowering tree technique in the original story. It turned out that the wood golem, wood dragon, and advent of a world of flowering trees were the limits of their understanding. Only Madara Uchiha, Black Zetsu, and Kurama truly knew about true several thousand hands. With this in mind, Yagyu felt at ease. Taking out his camera and activating his Sharingan, Yagyu quickly snapped photos of all the would-release techniques recorded in the scroll. Once finished, he neatly rolled the scroll back up and returned it to its original place. Rather than rushing to find the scroll of seals, Yagyu continued browsing the shelves, looking for other techniques he desired. Before long, he found what he was looking for. Water Release, Water Shockwave, Water Dragon Bullet, Heavenly Weeping, Surging Wave, Water Fong Bullet, and Water Severing Wave. These were none other than the water release techniques of Tobirama Senju. Like wood release, Yagyu considered water release to be the most compatible element for the sage body. Kisame Hoshigaki had become a powerhouse using only water release techniques and his vast chakra reserves, earning him the nickname, the Tailed Beast Without a Tail. As a Senju, Tobirama was known as the strongest water release user, a man said to have made a contract with the sea itself. Once again, Yagyu used his Sharingan and camera to record all the water release techniques he found. After putting those scrolls back, Yagyu turned his attention to another category, sealing techniques. Though these were neither elemental techniques nor forbidden jutsu, sealing techniques were notoriously difficult to master, yet could allow users to defeat stronger opponents. As an ally of the Uzumaki clan, Konoha had inherited the Uzumaki sealing techniques. Both the first and fourth Hokage's wives had come from the Uzumaki clan, ensuring that Konoha possessed a complete legacy of Uzumaki sealing techniques. Yagyu continued photographing these sealing techniques, not only for his own use but also to teach Karen. Even if Tsunade didn't take Karen as a student, Yagyu could secretly teach her these techniques, allowing Karen to pass them on to Ino and share what didn't require Yin chakra with Hinata. Among the 4 girls, only Hinata lacked the Yin attribute chakra. After replacing the film in his camera, Yagyu continued flipping through the scrolls but soon furrowed his brows. He had noticed something strange: there were no standalone scrolls for forbidden techniques. In the original story, Orochimaru had obtained the eight-headed serpent jutsu and impure world reincarnation techniques from here, which suggested that these forbidden jutsu had individual scrolls. When Minato learned the Flying Thunder God technique, he wouldn't have studied it directly from the Scroll of Seals. Jiraiya had likely given him a separate scroll. So, why was there not a single standalone scroll for forbidden techniques here? Had Hiruzen Sarutobi moved them elsewhere after discovering that Orochimaru had taken the eight-headed serpent and impure world reincarnation techniques? Continuing to search the shelves, Yagyu found no standalone scrolls for forbidden techniques. Finally, he arrived at the section where the Scroll of Seals was stored and located the massive scroll hidden within a compartment. The scroll, with its distinctive red and white design, was marked with a large character, Seal. With his Sharingan's X-ray vision, Yagyu could immediately confirm that this was the genuine Scroll of Seals. He also realized that the one Naruto had stolen in the past was a fake, used as part of a scheme by Hiruzen Sarutobi. The reason? Yagyu's Sharingan revealed that the seal character on this scroll was actually a sealing jutsu. Without breaking this seal, it was impossible to read the forbidden techniques within. Though it made sense, Yagyu couldn't help but let out a small sigh of exasperation. After all, he hadn't yet developed his proficiency in sealing techniques, and the photos he had taken of the Uzumaki techniques were still undeveloped. For now, Yagyu had no way of accessing the forbidden techniques within the Scroll of Seals. For a moment, Yagyu considered taking the Scroll of Seals with him to study later. But in the next instant, he dismissed the idea. If he didn't kill Tenzo, then once this mysterious intruder was reported to the Konoha higher-ups, they would know someone had entered the forbidden jutsu library. A quick inspection would reveal that the Scroll of Seals had been stolen. Whether or not Yagyu returned it, once he used any of the forbidden techniques from the scroll, he would incriminate himself. However, if he obtained the Scroll of Seals through legitimate means from Tsunade in the future, then he wouldn't need to take it now. He just had to gain her trust as a fellow Senju and ask for access to the scroll later. Suddenly, an idea struck Yagyu, sending shivers down his spine. He had thought of a way to not only gain access to the forbidden techniques in the Scroll of Seals but also unlock the legendary true several thousand hands technique that was missing from the wood-release scroll. Without another glance at the Scroll of Seals, Yagyu shut the compartment. Approaching the unconscious Tenzo, Yagyu propped him up against the wall, removed his cat mask, and activated his Sharingan. Placing his hand on Tenzo's head, Yagyu injected in-release chakra into Tenzo's brain, manipulating his neural pathways. Just like how Itachi Uchiha had hypnotized Kabuto, Yagyu used the Sharingan to influence Tenzo's mind. Before long, Tenzo's eyes opened, but they were vacant, his expression dull. Now under hypnosis, Yagyu asked, "Did you see what controlled your body earlier?" It was the binding jutsu. Tenzo replied in a dazed voice. "Besides the binding jutsu, did you notice anything else?" "And no. The mist, it was too thick." "And do you know what knocked you unconscious?" I don't know." Satisfied with this answer, Yagyu nodded. Since Tenzo hadn't seen the shadow imitation technique or recognized the nature of his point strike, Yagyu wouldn't implicate the Nara or Hyuga clans. Yagyu then put Tenzo back into a deep sleep, hoisted him over his shoulder, and returned to the underground base. After leaving Tenzo's unconscious body there, Yagyu body flickered out of the base and, using his red-eye illusion to conceal himself, swiftly left Konoha's central district. Upon reaching the Naka River near the Uchiha district, Yagyu stored his cloak and mask in his spatial inventory, then jumped into the river to wash off any lingering traces. This way, even the Inuzuka clan's ninja hounds would lose his scent trail here. By the time Konoha's higher-ups realized what had happened and mobilized the Inuzuka clan, the scent would have long disappeared. After all, that single strike from Himawari had knocked Naruto, one of the strongest shinobi in the world, unconscious for a significant time. Tenzo, having taken a similar blow from Yagyu, would likely remain unconscious for at least a full day. Yagyu's dip in the river was just a precaution. Chapter 67, Mission accomplished, the incident ends, and the new era begins. After emerging from the Naka River, Yagyu quickly changed into dry clothes, then donned a new black cloak and mask. He formed a hand seal and activated his Kagura's mind eye to check the location of his shadow clone. At that moment, his shadow clone had already organized the genin from the contestants' area. They received an A-rank mission from Kakashi Hatake and were on their way to the forest to assist Sasuke Uchiha in pursuing Gaara and his siblings. Satisfied, Yagyu reactivated his red eye's Farsight and X-ray vision, searching for a particular place. After several minutes, Yagyu left Konoha and finally found the location at the base of a distant cliff. Using the lightning release chakra mode, Yagyu moved at full speed. By now, the Konoha ninja had nearly finished evacuating all the villagers to the shelters. According to Konoha's safety protocol, once the villagers were secure, the shinobi would gather all their forces and swiftly eliminate the remaining enemies. This meant that Hiruzen Sarutobi's death was approaching, and Yagyu had to act quickly to complete his objectives. He needed to finish before the incident concluded and then regroup with his shadow clone to create an alibi. Before long, Yagyu arrived at his destination. In front of him stood an old, weathered shrine, showing clear signs of age. Before the fourth Hokage's death, this place had been maintained regularly. But after the death of Minato and Kushina, no one came here anymore. This shrine was called the Mask Storage Temple. It was an ancient building left by the Uzumaki clan during the Warring States period, before they moved to the island and established Uzushiogakyur in the land of whirlpools. Upon entering the shrine, Yagyu noticed the walls were covered with spider webs, and numerous masks hung from them. Each mask had a different shape and design, but they all bore the terrifying visage of a fanged demon. Yagyu's eyes glowed red as he swept his gaze across the rows of masks. Using his special red vision, he quickly identified several masks emitting a unique chakra signature. These were clearly special ninja tools. Yagyu took down several of these masks and immediately recognized the one he had come for, the Shinigami mask, which Orochimaru had used in the original story to retrieve his soul and release the spirits of the previous Hokage. Yagyu knew the effects of the Shinigami mask but had no idea about the abilities of the other masks. However, he could safely assume they were all related to the Uzumaki clan's sealing techniques. Thus, Yagyu stored the Shinigami mask and the other masks into a storage scroll and placed the scroll into his spatial inventory. Leaving the shrine, Yagyu looked up at the clear sky, feeling elated. He suddenly felt the urge to shout out loud. Everything had gone too smoothly. Everything Yagyu had longed for was now in his possession, and things had gone so smoothly that it felt like he was favored by fate itself. But Yagyu knew that luck was only part of it. The real credit went to his journal, which recorded the main storyline and key events, and to his meticulous planning over the past month. Had he not encountered Raiga Kurosuke and the Red Eye bloodline user during his first C-rank mission, he wouldn't have set his sights on Haku. If he hadn't obtained ice release and learned one-handed hand seals from Haku, and later discovered that shadow clones could increase his drop rate, he wouldn't have devised the bold plan to gain would release and forge his identity as a Senju descendant. If he hadn't suddenly recalled how Orochimaru had revived the previous Hokage, Yagyu wouldn't have come here to find the Shinigami mask. Now, everything was in place. The only thing left was to use Edo Tensei to summon the past Hokage and, as a descendant, request various forbidden techniques from Tobirama Senju, as well as the would-release ultimate Jutsu Sage art, would-release, true several thousand hands from Hashirama Senju. Yagyu had a plan, it just needed to be fine-tuned. The crackling sound of electricity suddenly filled the air. Using both the lightning release armor and the lightning release chakra mode together, Yagyu transformed into a streak of blue-white lightning and quickly made his way back to Konoha. Along the way, Yagyu once again fully activated his Kagura's mind eye, sensing that the Konoha ninja had all regrouped. This clearly meant they had finished evacuating the villagers and were now focusing all their efforts on repelling the enemies. Although Konoha was no longer the most powerful shinobi village it once was, its foundations were still formidable. Suna, being the weakest of the 5 great shinobi nations, with the least resources, hadn't sent its full force into the attack. They also lacked a second Kage-level shinobi besides the 4th Kazekage. Once Konoha launched its counterattack, and the various ninja clans joined the fight, the tide quickly turned against Suna and the Sound Village. The master-student battle on the rooftop and Naruto's battle with Gaara were both nearing their end. As the Konoha 11 went to assist Sasuke, they were relentlessly pursued by numerous sound ninja. Kankuro had also stayed behind to cover Temari and Gaara's retreat. Yagyu's shadow clone had organized Team 8, Shikamaru, and Sakura to deal with the pursuing sound ninja and Kankuro, taking a low-profile, support role. From the beginning, Yagyu had no intention of standing out during the Konoha Crush Plan. As Orochimaru had said, this event would restart the long stagnant wheels of Konoha. Even though Yagyu knew that Hiruzen Sarutobi was old and frail, and that even if he exposed his would-release abilities, he wouldn't be feared but rather highly valued and nurtured, he still wanted Sarutobi to die. If Sarutobi didn't die, it would give Danzo the confidence to continue his secret operations. Even if Sarutobi found out about Danzo's schemes, he would do little more than give his old friend a light reprimand. Even though Danzo had been stripped of his position as the Hokage's advisor, he still had the means to secretly cultivate root ninjas. If Sarutobi didn't die, and Yagyu brought Karen to Konoha, Danzo would undoubtedly target her. Yagyu didn't want to face future regrets, realizing too late that killing Danzo wouldn't fix things. Only when Sarutobi was dead and Tsunade took over as Hokage, bringing Karen to Konoha herself, would Yagyu feel truly at ease. In the original story, it wasn't until after the Pain invasion, when Tsunade fell into a coma, that Danzo finally seized an opportunity to make his move. During the 3.5 years that Tsunade was Hokage, the most Danzo managed was appointing Sai to Team 7. This showed that Tsunade had a strong presence of authority. It made sense, Tsunade was personally brought back by Jiraiya, the man who had loved her his whole life. Jiraiya would undoubtedly support her unconditionally. Opposing Tsunade meant opposing not only the major ninja clans but also Jiraiya and the Fire Daimyo. Without his position as Hokage advisor, Danzo certainly wouldn't have the confidence to stir up trouble. Before long, Yagyu reached the vicinity of his shadow clone. Before he could merge with the clone, Yagyu noticed two giant beasts battling in the distance, creating fierce wind and rain. These two beasts were the One-Tail, Shikaku, unleashed by Gaara through his fake sleep technique, and Gamabunta, summoned by Naruto. The two titans clashed using wind and water release, their collisions creating a storm that shattered Sasuke Uchiha's worldview. Until that moment, Sasuke had never seen creatures of such size, nor jutsu with such vast range and power. At that moment, Sasuke finally realized that Naruto, the supposed dead last, had unknowingly surpassed him. The confidence and pride Sasuke had gained from learning the Chidori were utterly destroyed in that moment. One more push, and Sasuke would take the first step toward his descent into darkness. Seeing this, Yagyu knew the Konoha Crush Plan was almost over. With the help of his red-eye illusions and lightning release chakra mode, Yagyu quickly swapped places with his shadow clone. By this time, the Sound Ninja pursuing them, as well as Kankuro, had been defeated by Team 8 and Shikamaru under Yagyu's clone's guidance. Let's go. It looks like Naruto's battle is over. Yagyu led Hinata and the others toward the location where Naruto and Sasuke had fought. Before long, they came upon Naruto and Gaara lying on the ground, with Sasuke and Temari standing guard over them. Kankuro. Seeing Kankuro, unconscious and being carried by Shino Aburame, Temari's face filled with shock. Yagyu looked at the unconscious Naruto and asked knowingly, was that giant summoning creature Naruto's? Yeah. Sasuke nodded with a complicated expression. Looks like we've won. Yagyu turned to Temari and asked, will you surrender, or fight to the death? We surrender. Seeing Yagyu and the others unharmed, Temari wisely chose to give in. A smart choice. From the looks of it, you're all important figures in Suna. You'll likely get out of this unscathed. In the future, we may meet again on the battlefield or in diplomatic exchanges. I'd rather not humiliate you now. Yagyu created a shadow clone, which lifted Gaara, who had been shocked into silence by Naruto's determination, though he hadn't lost consciousness. The real Yagyu then warned Temari, if you don't want your companion to get hurt, behave yourself and follow along. I understand. Temari nodded obediently. With that, Yagyu and his team began to head back the way they came, with Sasuke carrying Naruto and following closely behind. As Yagyu's shadow clone carried Gaara, and the sound of Naruto's heavy breathing filled his ears, Sasuke's eyes were filled with frustration. Once, only Yagyu had been stronger than him, and even then, the gap wasn't that big. But now, at least 3 of his peers had surpassed him. Even Naruto, whom he had always seen as inferior, had quietly overtaken him. With how weak he was now, how could he ever hope to kill that man? As these thoughts consumed him, the curse mark sealed on Sasuke's neck began to heat up, causing a burning sensation. At the same time, the image of the overwhelming chakra from the Chunin exams, the one that felt even more oppressive than Zabuza or Kakashi, flashed in Sasuke's mind. If he followed that man, he might become stronger. Yagyu wasn't aware of Sasuke's thoughts. Even if he had known, he wouldn't have been able to stop him. Since the age of 7, Sasuke had lived solely for revenge. As long as it meant he could kill Itachi Uchiha, he would pay any price. By the time Yagyu and the others returned to Konoha's central district, the Sound and Suna forces had either fled, been killed, or were captured. Seeing that Yagyu had safely returned with Team 8, Kurenai Yuhi, who had been with Kakashi Hatake and Might Guy, breathed a sigh of relief. Well done. You've earned great merit this time, Kurenai said with a proud smile when she saw the captured Gaara and his siblings. Kurenai-sensei, is the battle over? Yagyu asked, glancing at the rooftop of the VIP section. The purple barrier was gone, and the rooftop was now occupied by several cloaked Umbu members. Yes, Kurenai nodded, her expression turning serious. The third Hokage has sacrificed himself. Hearing this, Yagyu and the others were visibly shocked, though Yagyu's reaction was somewhat exaggerated. With Kurenai's words, it was clear that Hiruzen Sarutobi's era, which had lasted for decades, had finally come to an end. A new era was about to begin. Chapter 68, Yagyu and Kurenai Yuhi. Just like the aftermath of the Ninetales attack, the atmosphere in Konoha after the collapse plan was oppressive and filled with sorrow. Fortunately, thanks to the lessons learned from the Ninetales incident 12 years ago, Konoha reacted quickly, minimizing the number of civilian casualties. Most of the deaths were from the shinobi who fought against the Sand and Sound ninjas. However, the snakes summoned from Ryuchi Cave by the Sound ninjas still destroyed a large number of buildings. Without the aid of ninjutsu, it would take quite some time to repair the damage. Yet, these damages were not the greatest loss. The biggest blow to Konoha in this incident was the permanent loss of their third Hokage. The 5 Kage are the pillars of the 5 great ninja villages. The death of any Kage deeply impacts the village's morale, sinking it to its lowest point. If a new Hokage isn't chosen quickly, the village could easily descend into chaos. Clients would begin doubting and losing trust in Konoha's strength. So, as soon as the collapse plan ended and word spread throughout the Land of Fire, the daimyo quickly sent envoys to Konoha's council to discuss whether they had a candidate for the 5th Hokage. But that's a matter for later. The next day, dark clouds loomed over Konoha, with flashes of white lightning flickering within the heavy clouds. The rumble of thunder occasionally echoed in the sky. The rain was on its way. At Yagyu's home, he stepped out wearing a black long-sleeve shirt and matching pants. Outside, waiting for him, were Hinata and 2 other girls, also dressed in black shirts and pants. Each of them held a white chrysanthemum in their hands, and their faces were solemn, lacking the smiles they usually wore. Together, the 4 of them made their way to the location of the memorial service. Along the way, Yagyu noticed many others dressed similarly to them. There were men and women, both shinobi and civilians. All were heading to pay their respects to the 3rd Hokage and the fallen shinobi. Suddenly, a flash of lightning illuminated the sky, followed by a torrential downpour accompanied by thunder. Rain began to engulf Konoha. After lining up to offer their white chrysanthemums, Yagyu and the others stood at the back of the crowd, silently mourning. Some people were bowing their heads, sobbing quietly, while others remained expressionless. The rain drenched everyone, making it hard to tell whether the water on their faces was rain or tears. The sorrowful atmosphere weighed heavily on everyone's hearts. Even Yagyu, who didn't feel sad, was affected by the mood, feeling a deep heaviness in his chest. Thankfully, the memorial service ended soon after, and Yagyu and his companions dispersed to return home. Due to the solemn atmosphere and the heavy rain, Ino and the others didn't invite Yagyu to hang out or visit his home. It seemed it would take a few days before they could recover. After the service, villagers began rebuilding the damaged parts of the village. The higher-ups also discovered the situation at the Hokage Tower and with Yamato, and they were actively investigating the mysterious intruder. However, since nothing important had been stolen from the Forbidden Jutsu Vault, and the most valuable item, the Scroll of Seals, hadn't been taken, they had to temporarily set the matter aside. Right now, choosing the 5th Hokage was the most pressing issue for Konoha. Kohara Udatane and Hamura Mitokado immediately approached Jiraiya, hoping he would take on the role of the 5th Hokage. As a student of the third Hokage and the teacher of the fourth Hokage, Jiraiya was both powerful and had the ideal background to be the next Hokage. Of course, Jiraiya declined. But in this situation, it wasn't as simple as just saying no. Just like in the original story, when Koharu and Hamura pressured him, Jiraiya mentioned someone even more suitable to become Hokage, Tsunade. When they heard that Jiraiya could find Tsunade and convince her to return to take up the mantle of Hokage, Koharu and Hamura were silent for a few seconds before nodding. In the current Konoha, the only person more suited to be Hokage than Jiraiya was Tsunade, the granddaughter of the first and second Hokage. Once Jiraiya and Tsunade's names were submitted to the daimyo, it was certain that Tsunade would be chosen. It was simply the power of Konoha's lineage. That very day, Jiraiya prepared to leave the village with Naruto to find Tsunade. On that same day, Yagyu woke up early, ate breakfast, and went to the front door of Kurenai Yui's house. Knock, knock, knock. The sound of knocking echoed, and Kurenai soon opened the door. Seeing Yagyu standing there, Kurenai, who seemed to have just woken up, yawned and said, "Oh, it's Yagyu. Come on in." She then turned and headed toward the living room. However, she didn't notice Yagyu rub his nose awkwardly. It couldn't be helped, Kurenai didn't treat him as an outsider at all. Perhaps it was because she had just woken up, but Kurenai was only wearing a red camisole nightgown, leaving her shoulders, collarbone, and slender back exposed. The hem of her skirt barely covered her hips, and her ivory-white long legs were like magnets, drawing his eyes. Cough, cough. Yagyu closed the door, changed into the guest slippers at the entrance, and sat down on the sofa in the living room. Glancing at Kurenai in the kitchen, he cleared his throat and reminded her, "Kurenai-sensei, don't you think wearing something like that in front of a guy might be a little inappropriate?" "Ha! When did a 12-year-old kid like you become a man?" Kurenai teased, holding a glass of milk and deliberately shaking it in front of Yagyu. "Besides, don't you remember the nickname for our teammate? When you turn 20 and can have a drink with your teacher, then we'll talk about you being a man. For now, drink your milk, kid." Yagyu's face twitched slightly as Kurenai, clearly amused, headed into the bathroom to wash up and change clothes. Although Yagyu was nearly as tall as Kurenai, only a few centimeters shorter when she wore heels, his age was still an undeniable fact, and he couldn't argue against that. Taking a sip of his milk, Yagyu found it surprisingly unappealing, despite his usual habit of drinking milk every day to grow taller. "So, what's the reason for coming to see your teacher so early in the morning?" Kurenai asked after finishing her wash-up and changing into her usual ninja attire. She poured herself a glass of milk and sat across from Yagyu. Yagyu straightened up and replied, "I'm here today to ask if you would be willing to act as a sponsor to help someone join Konoha." Hearing this, Kurenai's expression turned serious. She looked at Yagyu and asked, "Is this someone you met during the Chunin exams from another village?" "Yeah," Yagyu nodded, then explained Karen's story. "She's a genin from Kusagakure that I met during the second stage of the exams. She's also a descendant of the Uzumaki clan." "A descendant of the Uzumaki clan? Are you sure?" Kurenai's eyes widened in surprise as she looked at Yagyu. "Yes, I'm sure. I'm good at history, and I remember reading about how the Uzumaki clan were Konoha's allies both during the Warring States period and after the founding of the village, and that they were distant relatives of the Senju clan." Yagyu continued, "I felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity with her. When I rescued her, she was unconscious, and while treating her injuries, I noticed many bite marks of various shapes and sizes on her arms. That's a unique healing ability of the Uzumaki clan, vitality healing." "Is her hair red?" Kurenai asked. "Yes, it is." "Then it's quite likely she's a descendant of the Uzumaki clan." Kurenai nodded and then said, "I can be her sponsor, but you should know that any outsider wishing to join Konoha must undergo an interrogation by the torture and interrogation force to ensure they're not spies. Even if she is a descendant of the Uzumaki clan, she won't be exempt from this." "I understand, and she's willing to accept that. Looks like you two have kept in touch regularly. Is she in Konoha now?" "No, she's currently in Tanzaku town in the Land of Fire." Yagyu shook his head and explained, "Kusagakure has been using her as a medical tool. They even brought her to the Chunin exams for that purpose." When I realized she was a descendant of the Uzumaki clan and learned about her circumstances, I secretly helped her escape from Konoha and had her wait for me in Tanzaka town to avoid causing any diplomatic trouble for the village. Smart move. Kurenai didn't criticize Yagyu for his actions. Instead, she praised him. Matters involving diplomacy weren't something they, as shinobi, could decide. If they found an Uzumaki clan descendant outside, that would be a different situation. As allies of the Uzumaki clan, Konoha had a responsibility to assist the clan's descendants. As long as it was proven she was indeed an Uzumaki, and if she passed the torture and interrogation force's scrutiny, bringing her back to the village would be seen as a commendable act. Kurenai then asked, "So, are you here today because you want me to go with you to find her?" "Yes. As a genin, it's difficult for me to get permission to leave the village." "Come on, with how close you two seem, you've probably been sneaking out to see her regularly over the past month, haven't you?" Kurenai rolled her eyes and teased, "That phantom body flicker technique of yours, didn't you practice that during your secret trips?" "What phantom body flicker technique?" Yagyu feigned ignorance. "The one you used to defeat Shikamaru Nara." "Oh, that. It's actually a combination of the Naraku clone technique you taught me and the lightning chakra stimulation method." "I almost believed you. Last time, you said you immobilized Raiga with your binding technique, but you panicked when I mentioned bringing his head back." Seeing Yagyu's speechless face, Kurenai suddenly burst into laughter. All right, I know you're careful about your identity. Ninjas shouldn't easily reveal their secrets. It's good to be cautious. Hee hee. So, would you mind coming with me?" Yagyu scratched his head and smiled. "Sure. We can't take missions for a while anyway, so a trip will be a nice change of pace." Kurenai stood up, her eyes filled with anticipation. Chapter 69, Yagyu's Favor, Encounter with Uchiha Itachi and Kisame Hoshigaki. After deciding on their course of action, Kurenai Yuhi quickly packed her bags, storing her items in a storage scroll. Seeing Yagyu empty-handed, Kurenai couldn't help but ask, "Aren't you going to pack anything?" Yagyu took out a storage scroll from his pocket and smiled. "I've already prepared everything." "Impressive, it seems you were confident I'd agree." "Of course, you're the kindest and most compassionate teacher I've ever met, Kurenai-sensei. Such a sweet talker, no wonder Hinata and the others can't stay away from you." If there was a noticeable height difference, Kurenai might have playfully pinched Yagyu's cheek. His flattery made her quite happy. With Yagyu in tow, Kurenai headed to the Hokage's office to obtain permission to leave the village. Just like how Kakashi Hatake could issue A-rank missions to Genin during emergencies, Kurenai, who had been promoted from Special Jonin to Jonin earlier in the year, also had certain privileges within the village. At the very least, she had the freedom to leave the village without much restriction. As Kurenai finalized the paperwork and the two of them left Konoha, Sarutobi Asuma, who had been feeling down for days and staying at home smoking because of his father's death, finally decided to step outside. As if gathering courage for something, Asuma made his way to Kurenai's house and knocked on her door. Knock, knock, knock. The knocking continued, but there was no response. Seeing that Kurenai wasn't home, Asuma, who had finally gathered the courage to visit her, deflated like a balloon, his shoulders slumped as he walked away, head down. With a cigarette between his lips, Asuma's figure was one of melancholy. Little did Yagyu and Kurenai know that just after they left, Asuma had shown up at Kurenai's doorstep. By that time, the two of them had already handed over their travel papers to Izumo Kamizuki and Kotetsu Higane, the gatekeepers, and had left Konoha. Until the fifth Hokage was chosen, the mission system was temporarily suspended, and no one could accept or commission tasks. This gave most shinobi, except those guarding the borders and major cities, some time off. This was one of the reasons why Kurenai decided to take a break and clear her mind. Since the Hokage's succession ceremony would be announced nationwide, and Tanzaka town was a small town within the Land of Fire, Kurenai and Yagyu weren't in a hurry to use body flicker and instead walked leisurely as if on a sightseeing trip. Along the way, they chatted. "Yagyu, how do you manage to perform genjutsu without hand seals?" "Well, it's not entirely seal-free. At least for the genjutsu you taught me, Kurenai-sensei, I still use one-handed seals. It's just that my hand seal speed is so fast that most people can't notice. As for the seal-less genjutsu, I trigger them using sound." I learned it from a sound ninja skilled in sound-based genjutsu during the second part of the Chunin exams. I see, I thought your in chakra had grown strong enough that you no longer needed seals. Kurenai nodded, believing Yagyu's lie. After all, using one-handed seals could indeed catch enemies off guard, which was why Yagyu had coveted Haku's one-handed seal technique so much. Yagyu had been practicing his hand seal speed since childhood, so if he wanted to, he could move his hands fast enough to be undetectable, just like Uchiha Itachi. Your genjutsu skills are now almost on par with mine. Kurenai patted Yagyu's shoulder and smiled. When we get back from Tanzaku town, you should come by and spar with me more often. It'll help us both improve faster. Of course. Yagyu nodded obediently on the surface, though internally, he wondered how much he should hold back. It wasn't that he looked down on Kurenai, but his current genjutsu skills were only a Mangekyo Sharingan away from those of a genjutsu master like Uchiha Itachi. Itachi and Shisui became genjutsu masters largely because of the overwhelming power of the Mangekyo Sharingan. The three-tomo Sharingan was already known as the Eye of Hypnosis and the Eye of Genjutsu. It could perform genjutsu without seals and automatically reflect enemy genjutsu against those whose in chakra was inferior. However, even the three-tomo Sharingan's in chakra output paled in comparison to the Mangekyo Sharingan. Only with the Mangekyo could one truly control a tailed beast. Just think about how strong the in chakra output needed to be to control a tailed beast with just a glance. Even Uchiha Obito, whose body was half composed of Hashirama's cells, controlled one of the 5 Kage, Yagura Karatachi, using only a single Mangekyo Sharingan. When Yagyu's Sharingan had evolved to 3-tomo, thanks to gaining the genjutsu specialist talent from Kurenai, she was no longer a match for him. Though Yagyu had far surpassed Kurenai in strength, he still held deep respect and gratitude toward her. Just as Might Guy was willing to teach his students the 8 gates, Kurenai had entrusted Yagyu and his teammates with the Yuhi clan's genjutsu techniques not long after meeting them. If Shino or Hinata possessed in chakra, they too would have become genjutsu specialists, and Team 8 would have been known not just as the reconnaissance team but also as the genjutsu team. For that reason, Yagyu was extremely grateful and respectful to Kurenai. Yagyu had even decided that after Karen joined Konoha, he would use her as an excuse to teach some sealing techniques to Kurenai. Especially the Uzumaki clan's in seal, Yagyu was certain Kurenai wouldn't refuse. After all, what woman could turn down eternal youth? Of course, Kurenai had no idea what Yagyu was planning. If she did, she would surely be deeply touched and grateful. A good teacher needed good students. Otherwise, it would be a one-sided relationship, and sometimes students might even turn on their teachers. By the way, Kurenai's ruby-like eyes suddenly sparkled, and she looked at Yagyu with excitement. Did you bring your camera? Yes, I did. Do you want to take pictures? Of course. It's not every day we get to leave the village without being on a mission. We have to capture some beautiful memories. Kurenai then used the body flicker technique, her voice trailing in the air. Grab the camera and follow me, I know some great spots to take photos. Seeing her disappear into the distance, Yagyu became intrigued. He pulled out his camera from his storage scroll and used the body flicker to follow her. The Land of Fire was known for its dense forests, and you could see lush trees, cliffs, and waterfalls everywhere. The location Kurenai took Yagyu to was similar to the place where Yagyu trained by the waterfall. There, Kurenai posed in various ways next to the waterfall, asking Yagyu to take pictures. She even stood on the river, using chakra to balance on the water's surface, or stood under the mist of the waterfall, allowing Yagyu to capture the scene with water vapor surrounding her. Yagyu continued snapping photos, occasionally adjusting the angle of the shot and asking Kurenai to move based on the direction of the sunlight, capturing stunning images of her amidst the natural scenery. Finally, Kurenai suggested, "Yagyu, let's take a picture together." Sure. Yagyu didn't refuse. He made a shadow clone to operate the camera while he stood next to Kurenai. With a bright smile, Kurenai wrapped an arm around Yagyu's shoulder, her eyes curving into crescent moons. Yagyu smiled as well, his hand casually in his pocket. Click. The camera shutter clicked, capturing a beautiful image of a teacher and her student, standing by the misty waterfall, as if they were in a mythical realm. This picture would likely end up framed on Kurenai's desk once developed. After that, Kurenai led Yagyu to several more scenic spots where they continued taking pictures and posing together. By midday, Kurenai's stomach grumbled in protest, causing the black-haired Kunoichi to blush. She threatened Yagyu to forget what he'd heard and then took him to a nearby town for lunch. After lunch, the two continued their leisurely journey, enjoying the scenery. In the late afternoon, as the sun began to set, they decided to pick up the pace using the body flicker technique to ensure they found a village or town to rest before nightfall. Suddenly, the clear sound of wind chimes reached their ears. Two figures appeared ahead on the forest path, walking slowly toward them. As soon as Kurenai and Yagyu saw the two figures, their pupils shrank. Kurenai sensed an overwhelming aura, causing her body to instinctively tense up. Yagyu recognized them. He couldn't help it, their attire was too iconic for a reincarnated person like him to forget. They wore black cloaks embroidered with red clouds and conical hats with wind chimes. Even without seeing their faces, Yagyu immediately knew who they were. Uchiha Itachi and Kisame Hoshigaki. Yagyu's heart sank slightly. He hadn't expected to encounter these two here, where Itachi, under the pretense of gathering intelligence, was really planning to return to Konoha to warn Danzo. Kurenai-sensei, don't act rashly. These two are incredibly powerful, Yagyu whispered softly enough that only the two of them could hear. Kurenai nodded, feeling the immense pressure. She didn't need Yagyu to tell her, she could sense that these two were strong. The faces under those hats were probably ones she had seen in the bingo book. What were such powerful individuals doing in the land of fire? And judging by the direction they were traveling, it seemed they were heading toward Konoha. Why were they going there? With these thoughts, Kurenai became even more cautious, not only for Yagyu's safety but also to report back to the village as soon as they distanced themselves from the duo. Sometimes, encounters on narrow paths were awkward. If one party made a sudden move, it could expose their intentions. If one side posed no threat, it might be fine, but when both parties harbored their own thoughts, tension arose. Just like the time Team 8 passed by the Kuratsuchi family, neither Yagyu nor Kurenai made any moves. They acted as if they were ordinary travelers passing by. However, as the four of them crossed paths, an unexpected event occurred. Ryup. Kisame's sword, same hata, wrapped in white bandages, began to twitch violently as if it had caught the scent of something irresistible. The sword tore through its bandages and lunged toward Yagyu, jaws open wide, eager to bite into its target. Already on high alert, Yagyu and Kurenai immediately used the body flicker to evade. As Yagyu flew backward, he inflated his cheeks and expelled a high-pressure stream of water, slicing through the air toward Itachi and Kisame. Kisame grabbed Samahata's hilt, and he and Itachi disappeared using body flicker. Yagyu's eyes briefly flashed red as he adjusted his water jet, slicing it toward the 3 o'clock direction. Crash! Trees were severed at their trunks, toppling over with a loud crash and raising clouds of dust. The water jet Yagyu unleashed was none other than the water release, water-severing wave. After developing the film containing all the techniques he had photographed, Yagyu's first priority wasn't learning wood release or sealing techniques, it was mastering Tobirama Senju's water-style jutsu. Having trained in water-style chakra control since childhood and having developed the spiral water dragon and S-rank hard whirlpool cutter using the chakra control techniques he had learned from Sakura, Yagyu had firmly established himself as the top water-style user in Konoha. Given his mastery, learning new water-style techniques was like a simple task, similar to clicking a "Learn" button in a video game. As the water jet cut through the trees, clearing a swath of forest, Yagyu suddenly stopped. Splash! The sound of rushing water filled the air. A massive wave rolled through, scattering the dust and rushing toward Yagyu and Kurenai. They quickly used the body flicker again, landing atop a tree. The water swirled, turning the area into a lake, with water reaching halfway up the trunks of the remaining trees. On the now barren lake's surface, two figures stood, their conical hats removed. Kisame gripped the twitching Samehata, his shark-like face twisted into a grin. For Samehata to go out of control like that. Itachi-san, do you think that kid could be the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki? No, Itachi replied flatly. The Nine-Tails Jinchuriki has blonde hair and blue eyes, like the fourth Hokage. Kisame's grin widened. So he's not the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, yet he has chakra that excites Samehata and can perform such a powerful water jutsu. Itachi-san, Konoha really is a cradle of geniuses. That water-style jutsu is probably the second Hokage's water-severing wave, Itachi said with a calm expression, though he sighed internally. As expected of the top student who had always bested Sasuke, Yagyu clearly wasn't just some ordinary orphan. Yes, Itachi knew who Yagyu was. At first, Itachi hadn't recognized him because Yagyu had grown so much. But now, after studying his hair and eyes, Itachi remembered. As a devoted brother, Itachi had always kept a close eye on Sasuke. By the time Itachi had massacred the Uchiha clan, Sasuke was already 7. Yagyu had gained the chakra of Ashura when he was 6, and Itachi had heard about him being named the top student over Sasuke. Itachi had once thought Yagyu was just another talented commoner, but now it seemed he might be the true monster of Sasuke's generation. Through the lens of Itachi's Sharingan, Yagyu's chakra reserves were as abundant as those of Kisame, the man known as the tailed beast. And Yagyu was only 12, still growing. When Yagyu reached Kisame's age, just how astonishing would his chakra reserves be? Could it be that Yagyu was a descendant of the Senju clan, having inherited their bloodline? No, that couldn't be the only explanation. Senju blood alone wouldn't account for such absurd chakra levels. There had to be another secret within Yagyu's body, one that gave him this extraordinary chakra. Itachi pondered this quietly. Chapter 70, The Battle of Water Gods, Kurenai-sensei defeated again. Itachi-san, now that we've been spotted, should we take care of them? Kisame Hoshigaki grinned wickedly. Otherwise, when we reach Konoha, we might just be caught in their web of traps. Uchiha Itachi remained silent for a few seconds before calmly replying, we're still in the land of fire, and after passing through a small town, we'll be near Konoha. There's a chance that Konoha shinobi could pass by here at any moment. We need to kill them as quickly as possible. Understood. Leave that kid to me, Kisame said, his expression twisted with anticipation. That kid's massive chakra and powerful water-style jutsu have made me curious. I want to see if my hunch is correct. As if understanding Kisame's words, Same Hata, the sword wrapped in white bandages, began to shake violently, drawn to Yagyu's chakra with an insatiable hunger. That person is Uchiha Itachi. Kurenai finally recognized him, her red pupils contracting in shock. Seeing Kisame next to Itachi, cold sweat appeared on her forehead, and her voice trembled. And that's the monster of the hidden mist, Kisame Hoshigaki. Why are 2 S-rank rogue ninjas here? Without time to process it fully, Kurenai watched as Kisame, holding Same Hata, sprinted across the water towards them. She quickly shouted, Yagyu, we need to run. They're top-level rogue ninjas, and we're no match for them. You're right, Kurenai-sensei, Yagyu replied, his expression serious. Such dangerous individuals traveling together must have some hidden agenda. Judging by the direction they're heading, they're probably on their way to Konoha. Now that we've identified them, they won't let us go easily. With our strength, escaping from 2 S-rank rogue ninjas will be incredibly difficult. So, Kurenai-sensei, you should escape. I'll stay behind and buy you time. No. Kurenai immediately shook her head. I can't leave you behind. If anyone should stay, it's me. Don't be reckless, Kurenai-sensei, Yagyu said gravely as Kisame drew closer. You saw how I defeated Shikamaru. You know how fast I am. If I stay to hold them off, we both have a chance of survival. No more arguments, Kurenai said resolutely, pulling out a kunai. If we die together. I won't abandon my student. Seeing Kurenai's unwavering determination, Yagyu smiled slightly. Very well then, let's fight them together. Yes. I'll take care of Uchiha Itachi, Kurenai said, inadvertently making a bold statement. Water style, water shark bullet jutsu. Kisame's voice echoed as the water beneath Yagyu and Kurenai swirled and transformed into a massive shark, its jaws wide open as it lunged upward toward them. Swish. Swish. Both Yagyu and Kurenai vanished with the body flicker technique. Kurenai landed on the water's surface, running toward the motionless Uchiha Itachi. Meanwhile, Yagyu also appeared on the water, riding on a water-formed surfboard that carried him at high speed towards Kisame. As he sped forward, Yagyu pulled out a kunai from his pouch, coating it with water-style chakra, transforming it into a fluid, razor-sharp water blade. That water-style chakra control and shape manipulation, looks like my guess was right, Kisame grinned, his bloodlust growing. He seemed excited to have found a kindred spirit. In response, water formed a surfboard under Kisame's feet as well, propelling him toward Yagyu at high speed. The two were like surfers racing across the water, ready to clash head-on. Just as they were about to collide, Yagyu suddenly leaped into the air, switching his grip on the water blade from a reverse hold to an overhead slash aimed at Kisame. Kisame gripped Samehada with both hands, swinging upward to intercept Yagyu's strike. Boom. Water blade and Samehada clashed, sending a violent shockwave across the lake, creating ripples and waves. Despite Yagyu's best efforts, his water blade left no mark on Samehada. Not only that, but the water chakra coating Yagyu's kunai was quickly absorbed, disappearing entirely. Yagyu wasn't surprised, he already knew about Samehada's ability. In fact, he had used water blade slash precisely to create this opening. Taking advantage of the moment while Samehada was absorbing his chakra, Yagyu puffed his cheeks and shot several water needles toward Kisame's eyes and face. If hit, Kisame would be blinded instantly. However, a water shark suddenly emerged from the lake, swallowing Kisame whole. The shark absorbed the impact of Yagyu's water needles, then leaped back into the lake, pulling Kisame away from Yagyu. Seconds later, the water shark burst from the lake again, dissolving into water. Kisame, unharmed, rested Samehada on his shoulder and grinned. Such cunning tactics and water-style jutsu, combined with your silver hair and red eyes, you must be a descendant of the Senju clan. Yagyu had no time to respond to Kisame's taunts. Realizing his sneak attack had failed, he glanced briefly toward Kurenai's side of the battlefield before deciding to go all out. Raising his right hand, a swirling blue chakra sphere formed in his palm, quickly becoming a mini whirlwind. Within seconds, the color deepened to an even richer blue. Water from the air and the lake gathered into the whirlwind, transforming the chakra sphere into a swirling mass of water. Without hesitation, Yagyu hurled the mini water tornado toward Kisame. The moment it left his hand, the vortex began sucking up water from the lake and moisture from the air, growing rapidly in size until it became a towering water cyclone, racing toward Kisame. Impressive, no hand seals and a jutsu I've never seen before. Looks like I underestimated you, Kisame remarked, setting Samehada back on his back. He quickly formed hand seals and thrust his hands forward. Water style, Great Shark Bullet Jutsu. A colossal water shark, even larger than before, erupted from the lake, its massive jaws opening wide as it charged toward Yagyu's water cyclone. When the two jutsu collided, there was no explosion or stalemate. Instead, Yagyu's water cyclone was instantly overwhelmed, its chakra and water absorbed by Kisame's shark, making the already massive creature grow even larger as it surged toward Yagyu like a mountain. Zzz. The crackling sound of electricity filled the air, and in the blink of an eye, Yagyu disappeared, evading Kisame's monstrous shark. When Yagyu reappeared, he was a few meters to Kisame's left, mid-air, holding a water spear. But instead of throwing it at Kisame, he hurled it toward the lake several meters away. Seeing the water spear, Kisame's expression changed drastically. Without hesitation, he used water-style, water shark bullet jutsu again, encasing himself in a shark made of water to flee into the lake. Boom. Just after Kisame escaped, a massive explosion rang out. The water spear unleashed a terrifying amount of chakra, forming a gigantic water tornado that absorbed the surrounding water, growing even larger than Yagyu's spiral water dragon. Water style, giant exploding water colliding wave. As Kisame evaded Yagyu's attack, he unleashed another torrent of water from his mouth, flooding the area once again and raising the water level to its previous height. He quickly followed up with another technique, water style, for shark rain. Four enormous water sharks leaped into the air from all directions around Yagyu, their massive bodies casting shadows as they lunged toward him. Water style, water wall. Yagyu clapped his hands together, summoning a swirling water vortex around himself, forming a protective barrier. The four sharks collided with the spinning water wall, breaking apart into thousands of smaller sharks, but they were unable to breach Yagyu's defense. Instead, they were sucked into the vortex and dissipated as their chakra was depleted, ultimately strengthening Yagyu's water wall. Once the threat was neutralized, Yagyu's water wall expanded outward, transforming into a river-like stream that surged toward Kisame. Though the attack was powerful, it had a clear wind-up, much like Kisame's giant shark from earlier. Kisame easily evaded the strike with a body flicker, but the resulting explosion of water drenched him, making his grin even more savage. In just a few minutes, Yagyu and Kisame had exchanged several high-level and secret water-style techniques, each requiring a tremendous amount of chakra, enough to drain a jonin instantly. Their battle was like a clash between two gods of water. While Yagyu and Kisame were locked in combat, the battle on the other side had already ended. Just like in the original timeline, Kurenai, who had only recently been promoted to jonin, had no experience dealing with the Sharingan. After years of the Uchiha clan's extinction, the Sharingan had become a legendary bloodline limit. Kurenai, who had never faced someone like Kakashi with an implanted Sharingan, had no idea that the Uchiha's natural three-tomo Sharingan was far more potent. Despite taking the battle seriously, Kurenai's full-strength attack, the demonic illusion, tree-binding death, aimed to immobilize Itachi and follow up with an offensive genjutsu. But just as the large illusionary tree materialized and wrapped its vine-like tendrils around Itachi, Kurenai's vision abruptly shifted. The next moment, as she prepared to perform her follow-up jutsu, she found herself paralyzed. Somehow, Itachi had closed the distance between them, standing directly in front of her. When she looked up, she realized that they had switched places. Now, she was the one ensnared by her own tree-binding death technique. Horrified, Kurenai gasped, "Genjutsu reversal." "When?" "It began the moment you made eye contact with me," Itachi said softly as he drew a kunai from his sleeve and stabbed it into Kurenai's body. "I didn't want to kill you, Kurenai-san. But since you've discovered us, you've left me no choice. As an old comrade, I'll at least give you a merciful death." With that, Itachi's three-tomo Sharingan morphed into a Mangekyo pattern resembling a tri-bladed shuriken. The powerful Yin released chakra from his Mangekyo Sharingan surged into Kurenai's mind, taking control of her nervous system and immobilizing her. Just one look from Itachi was enough to leave Kurenai utterly defenseless, her body moving like a puppet. The illusionary vines and tree that had bound her disappeared, but she collapsed into the lake, her body slowly sinking beneath the bloodied waters, with a kunai still lodged in her abdomen. "Sensei!" Yagyu's furious voice roared. Water-style, water dragon-biting explosion. A massive whirlpool appeared beneath Itachi's feet, forming a giant dragon-like maw that surged upward to swallow him whole. Swish! Itachi vanished with the body flicker, leaving the water dragon to snap at empty air. A huge water dragon burst from the lake, lunging toward Itachi's new location. Fire-style, great fireball jutsu. Itachi's hands formed seals in a blur, and he exhaled a small flame that rapidly expanded into a massive fireball, colliding with the water dragon. Boom! A massive explosion followed, releasing a thick cloud of steam that enveloped the battlefield. The sight seemed to give Yagyu an idea. Thick fog materialized from thin air, turning the lake into a misty realm. Despite the sudden fog, Itachi remained expressionless, though he silently breathed a sigh of relief. Good thing this kid isn't reckless, otherwise, creating an opportunity for them to escape might have been impossible. This boy, Itachi thought, truly is more exceptional than Sasuke. He just hoped Yagyu wouldn't take out his anger on Sasuke for Itachi's actions. With a final thought, Itachi observed the fog dissipating and confirmed that both Yagyu and Kurenai had vanished without a trace. "Itachi-san, it seems they managed to escape," Kisame said as he returned to Itachi's side, acting as though he hadn't noticed Itachi's deliberate mercy. "Are we still heading to Konoha, even though our identities were revealed?" "Yes," Itachi replied coolly. "Kurenai-san is under my Mangekyo Genjutsu. She'll be out of commission for a while. Let's complete our mission quickly." Kisame, slightly concerned, asked, "Did you use that technique?" "No, she didn't warrant the use of Tsukuyomi," Itachi said, adjusting his hat. With that, he started walking toward Konoha again. Kisame followed, remarking, "It's been a while since I've fought so freely. It's a shame that kid wasn't able to go all out. I wonder if we'll cross paths with him again." "We will," Itachi replied. "After all, the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki is in Konoha." "True. I hope the boss's plan gets underway soon." With that, Itachi and Kisame continued their journey, leaving the battlefield behind. Chapter 71, Yagyu's Strength, finally some sense of security. Swish. In the dense forest, atop the treetop of a towering tree that would take several people to encircle, a figure suddenly appeared. After carrying Kurenai for several miles, Yagyu finally set her down and checked her injuries. Rip. The sound of fabric tearing echoed as Yagyu tore open a part of Kurenai's clothes near the kunai wound. He sighed in relief. It's a good thing it was from someone on our side. Otherwise, Kurenai-sensei, you might not have made it this time. Uchiha Itachi had been careful not to strike a fatal spot on Kurenai. As someone who had been ruthless enough to eliminate his own clan, including his parents, for the sake of the village, Itachi still showed restraint toward his former comrades. A man with such conviction, inheriting the will of fire perfectly, displayed the thought process of a Hokage even at the age of 7. If Itachi had been as ruthless as he was during the clan massacre, Yagyu would have had no choice but to flee alone, as rescuing Kurenai would have been impossible. Excluding Nagato, a Super Kage-level opponent, Uchiha Itachi was undoubtedly one of the strongest shinobi in the world. Tsukuyomi, Amaterasu, Izanagi, Izanami, Susanoo, the Tatsuka Blade, the Yata Mirror, Koto Amatsukami, each of these abilities was a game-changer. If Uchiha Madara was the one who perfected the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, then Itachi was the one who had fully tapped into the potential of the Mangekyo Sharingan. While other Uchiha would quickly wear themselves out using their exclusive techniques or Susanoo, Itachi pushed his Mangekyo to its limits without losing his sight. In Yagyu's previous life, there were many what-if debates about Itachi. People wondered, what if he hadn't been sick, or what if he had the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan? Could he have been stronger than Madara? The fact that people even entertained these thoughts showed how powerful Itachi truly was. In the original series, Itachi remained undefeated in battle, another testament to his strength. Thankfully, such a dangerous person was on their side. Otherwise, Yagyu would have felt incredibly guilty. Although Yagyu wasn't afraid of Itachi, confident that he could escape from the strongest duo of the Akatsuki, he couldn't guarantee Kurenai's safety. Despite all his water-style jutsu, Kisame Hoshigaki proved too formidable. Yagyu was even contemplating using wood-style jutsu when Itachi created the opportunity for him to rescue Kurenai. Before removing the kunai from Kurenai's body, Yagyu activated his 3-tomo Sharingan to assess her condition. He sighed in relief again after the examination. Kurenai's mental state appeared normal, meaning she hadn't fallen victim to Itachi's Tsukuyomi, his signature Mangekyo technique. Otherwise, without a medical expert like Tsunade, Kurenai would be bedridden for a week at best, or unconscious for a month at worst. Even so, Kurenai would remain in her comatose state for a few days. Her brain's chakra pathways were currently being manipulated by a powerful in-release chakra, keeping her trapped in a genjutsu world. Yagyu didn't have the ability to dispel the in-release chakra, and neither did Kurenai. They'd just have to wait for it to dissipate naturally. It was clear that Itachi had taken his mission seriously. After all, only the higher-ups in Konoha knew of Itachi's role as a double agent. To Konoha's other shinobi, he was nothing more than an S-rank rogue ninja who had massacred his clan. If Kurenai had remained conscious, she would have reported everything about Itachi and Kisame to Konoha. Itachi's purpose for returning to the village was to warn Danzo, letting him know that even though the third Hokage was dead, Uchiha Itachi was still very much alive. He also sought to find an opportunity to inform Konoha of the Akatsuki's plans to target the Jinchuriki without causing unnecessary bloodshed. After confirming that Kurenai's mental state was intact, Yagyu removed the kunai and began healing her with medical ninjutsu. With Yagyu's chakra being the most potent in the realm of yang release, even his most basic medical techniques surpassed the effects of the A-rank mystical palm technique. If he allowed Kurenai to bite him, her wounds would heal almost instantly, much like Kairin's healing ability. In a short while, Kurenai's injuries were completely healed, with no scars left behind. Once the in-release chakra in Kurenai's brain dissipated, she would wake up. With that in mind, Yagyu hoisted Kurenai onto his back and began using the body flicker technique at full speed, heading toward Tenzaku Town. This time, Yagyu made it to Tenzaku Town in just 3 hours. By the time they arrived, night had already fallen. Knock, knock, knock. Yagyu appeared at Kairin's door and knocked. "Yagyu-kun, you're here." Kairin's delighted voice called out before the door even opened. When the wooden door finally swung open, Yagyu was greeted by a red-haired girl wearing cute white pajamas and round glasses. "Sorry to keep you waiting, Kairin. I'm here to bring you to Konoha," Yagyu said with a smile. Karen beamed with joy, but her expression quickly changed when she noticed kurenai on Yagyu's back. Yagyu, who is she? She asked hurriedly. She's my teacher, kurenai-sensei. She's also the person who will be vouching for you to join Konoha, Yagyu explained briefly. We encountered some rogue ninja on the way, and she got injured and passed out. Let me bring her inside first. Of course, come in, Yagyu-kun. Karen quickly stepped aside, allowing Yagyu to carry kurenai inside. Once inside, Karen rolled up her sleeves and offered her arm, asking worriedly, how bad is she? Do you need me to heal her? No need, Yagyu shook his head. Kurenai-sensei is just under a genjutsu. She'll wake up once the Een release chakra in her brain fades. She just needs to rest for a few days. That's a relief, Karen sighed, visibly relaxing. Then she added with a guilty expression, I'm sorry. This is all my fault. After placing kurenai on the bed, Yagyu patted Karen's head, smiling gently, don't overthink it. This was just a coincidence. To shift her focus, he asked, so, how's your progress? Have you mastered the jutsu I taught you? Yes. I've already mastered the medical ninjutsu and water-style jutsu you taught me, Karen replied enthusiastically, nodding her head repeatedly. As expected of a descendant of the Uzumaki clan. Your chakra control is as exceptional as one of my friends, Yagyu praised, ruffling Karen's hair even more. Hee hee. Karen giggled, her mood immediately improving. Suddenly, she remembered something and asked, by the way, Yagyu-kun, have you eaten yet? Not yet, Yagyu shook his head. I had a fight with the rogue ninjas on the way, and we've been traveling ever since. I'll make you something to eat right away, Karen said, heading to the kitchen. Yagyu didn't refuse. Before that, could you prepare some hot water? I'd like to take a bath first. Of course. Karen quickly went to the bathroom to run the hot water, then went to the next room to grab clothes and set up a bed for Yagyu. Her actions were quick and practiced, showing that this wasn't the first time she had done this. As the ultimate caretaker, Karen had placed herself in a position of servitude, to the point where it was heartbreaking to see. Unlike Ino, Hinata, and Sakura, Karen had only recently met Yagyu. She had been saved by him, pulled out from the depths of despair, and saw him as the only light in her life. There's a saying, before seeing the light, I could bear the darkness. But after experiencing the light, the thought of losing it terrifies me. Since meeting Yagyu, Karen had feared losing his affection and attention, which made her instinctively want to please him. While Ino and the others wouldn't hesitate to let Yagyu cook for them when they were feeling lazy, Karen had never let him enter the kitchen during their time together. Yagyu had tried several times to correct Karen's self-deprecating behavior, but with little success. He figured that once Karen joined Konoha and gained Tsunade's protection, she'd realize the weight of her Uzumaki heritage, and that would eventually bring her the confidence she needed. Until then, Yagyu had decided not to push too hard and had grown accustomed to her care. Inside the bathroom, Yagyu finished cleaning himself and sank into the bathtub to relax. As he gazed at the steamy ceiling, his mind calm, Yagyu began reflecting on his fight with Kisame. After learning Tobirama Senju's water-style techniques, Yagyu's proficiency in water release had reached the top ranks of the shinobi world. Even against Kisame's relentless attacks, Yagyu had held his own, although neither of them could land a decisive blow on the other. However, neither Yagyu nor Kisame had gone all out. Kisame hadn't fused with same hata, and Yagyu hadn't used wood-style jutsu. If they had fought with their full strength, the outcome would have been uncertain. After all, Yagyu hadn't yet mastered the higher-level wood-style techniques, making water-style his strongest weapon. But even so, Yagyu felt confident that he was now a top-tier shinobi. In any of the 5 great nations, he would be considered a top operative, someone who could be a contender for the Kage title if no better candidate were available. Only other elite water-style users like Kisame, high-level fire-style users, or someone with an elemental advantage could stand toe-to-toe with Yagyu. His most significant threats were Kisame when fused with same hata, high-level earth release users, and special types of shinobi, such as Uchiha Itachi with his Tsukuyomi, Uchiha Obito with his spacetime jutsu, and flying shinobi. These individuals were not only formidable but were threats that even the 5 Kage might struggle to defeat. Among his peers, Yagyu was unquestionably in a league of his own. Realizing this brought a rare smile to Yagyu's face as he sank deeper into the bathwater, feeling a sense of relief. After 12 years of living in this world, he finally had a sense of security. After his bath, Yagyu changed into his pajamas and came out of the bathroom to find that Karen had already prepared a simple dinner for him. As Yagyu ate, he chatted with Karen, his mind pondering when to teach her the sealing techniques. Karen needed to master the sealing techniques first, as that would give Yagyu an excuse to teach them to Ino, Sakura, and Kurenai, while also allowing him to use them openly. But Yagyu wasn't sure if Tsunade would trust Karen immediately after she joined Konoha or if she'd allow Karen to undergo the interrogation process. If that were the case, Yagyu couldn't teach her the sealing techniques before she officially joined Konoha. He needed to come up with a suitable reason for Karen to learn them, and it had to happen before Tsunade decided to take Karen under her wing. Otherwise, if Tsunade suddenly gave Karen the Uzumaki clan sealing scrolls, Yagyu wouldn't be able to use Karen as a cover. As a descendant of the Senju clan, Yagyu could learn the sealing techniques from Karen, and Tsunade would likely turn a blind eye. But if he taught them to others without permission, it would be considered a breach of protocol. That was the advantage of having something officially under your name. He needed to figure out the perfect timing. Swish. Suddenly, an idea flashed through Yagyu's mind, a brilliant solution. The solution was the mask storage shrine. If Karen were to discover the Uzumaki clan's inheritance there, it would provide a solid reason for her sudden mastery of the sealing techniques. Even if Karen underwent an interrogation upon joining Konoha, the explanation would be foolproof. Yagyu's thoughts lightened, and he devoured his dinner quickly, much to Karen's delight. For the next few days, Karen took care of Kurenai while Yagyu expanded his sensory range, using the Kagura Mind's Eye to cover the entire Tanzaku town, scanning for the arrival of the legendary Sannin. Tsunade and Shizun didn't make him wait long. One day, Yagyu sensed an enormous chakra presence in his mind's eye. Beside that chakra was another, about as powerful as Kurenai's. When Yagyu activated his Sharingan, he saw that the two individuals were Tsunade and Shizun. Their arrival meant that Orochimaru, Kabuto, Jiraiya, and Naruto weren't far behind. At the same time, Kurenai, who had been unconscious for several days, finally awoke from her genjutsu-induced slumber. The fact that Itachi's genjutsu had lasted several days, without even using Tsukuyomi, was a testament to how much stronger he had become in the last 5 years. "Kurenai-sensei, you're awake!" Yagyu exclaimed with a feigned expression of surprise. "Yagyu, are you all right?" were the first words Kurenai asked as she slowly opened her still blurry eyes, causing a warm feeling to bloom in Yagyu's heart. He gently patted her hand, smiling. "Don't worry, we're both fine. Those two rogue ninjas couldn't kill us." "That's good. I'm sorry I dragged you down." Kurenai's vision and consciousness gradually cleared, and the memories of being defeated by Itachi replayed in her mind. Her face flushed with embarrassment. "This is the second time I've held you back, counting Raiga Kurosuke. I must be a terrible teacher, huh?" "Not at all, Kurenai-sensei. You're incredibly strong, it's just bad luck that you've faced opponents who counter your strengths," Yagyu reassured her with a smile. "Besides, if you hadn't taught me genjutsu, I wouldn't have been able to escape from those two." "Enough with the flattery. I know you had to use one of your hidden trump cards to save me," Kurenai said with a self-deprecating smile. "Itachi's genjutsu mastery is the most terrifying I've ever encountered." Still, her spirits had visibly lifted. After glancing at the red-haired girl standing obediently beside Yagyu, Kurenai asked, "Is this the Uzumaki descendant you mentioned?" Chapter 72, The Changing Teacher-Student Relationship. "Tsunade, he's your clan member." "Yes, Kurenai-sensei," Yagyu introduced Karen to her. "This is Karen, and she's been taking care of you these past few days." "Thank you for looking after me, Karen," Kurenai said with a smile as she greeted Karen and tried to sit up. "Kurenai-sensei, wait." Karen hurriedly tried to warn her, but it was too late. The blanket that had only covered Kurenai's head and hands slid off as she sat up, revealing her bare body underneath. Yagyu's eyes widened in shock, contributing an eyes wide open, meme-like expression. "Ah!" Kurenai screamed, her voice shattering the silence like glass. She quickly covered herself with her arms, her face turning crimson as she glared at Yagyu in shame and frustration. "Why are you still standing here? Get out," she yelled. Oh. Yagyu snapped out of his daze and hurriedly left the room. Sensei, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. Yagyu could hear Karen repeatedly apologizing from behind the door, likely bowing to Kurenai non-stop. Yagyu rubbed his nose awkwardly, feeling a bit flustered. Being a teenager, having witnessed such a scene Southwest up close nearly made his nose bleed. Because of the boundaries between men and women, Yagyu had left Karen in charge of taking care of Kurenai these past few days and hadn't entered the room. He never imagined that Karen would be taking care of Kurenai without dressing her properly. Oh wait, now that he thought about it, Kurenai's clothes were probably too damaged to wear. When using his red-eye ability, which functions similarly to the Byakugan, Yagyu could only see the chakra flow and not the physical body beneath. So, he hadn't realized that Kurenai was completely undressed under the blanket. Having just woken up, and likely not fully alert, Kurenai herself hadn't noticed the situation. In the end, both of them were unaware, one inadvertently offering a view, and the other unintentionally receiving it. Still, she really had an impressive figure, Yagyu thought briefly before quickly shaking his head to clear away the improper thoughts. Pop. Suddenly, Yagyu heard a sound from inside the room, similar to the noise made when using the substitution jutsu or shadow clone jutsu. It could also have been the sound of a storage scroll being opened. Creak. Soon after, the sound of the door opening reached his ears. Kurenai, now fully dressed, stepped out of the room with a downcast Karen following closely behind. Sensei. Yagyu began, but before he could finish, Kurenai's arm wrapped around his neck in a headlock. You better forget everything you just saw. Kurenai growled fiercely. Sensei, you're making it impossible for me to forget. Yagyu mumbled, his face pressed against the very assets he had just seen, making his words come out muffled. Kurenai's face flushed an even deeper shade of red, and her hold on Yagyu's neck turned into a choking grip as she shook him. Forget it all. You hear me? She demanded. I heard you. Yagyu gasped, feigning discomfort as he nodded, despite Kurenai not using much force. Humph. Kurenai finally let go, huffing in frustration and turning her head to the side. It was clear that Kurenai would be unable to face Yagyu properly for a while after this incident. Her image as a teacher had been utterly shattered. Sensing her discomfort, Yagyu tried to reassure her, "It's okay, Kurenai-sensei. Just like you said the other day, I'm still just a kid drinking milk, right? You're still bringing that up?" Kurenai glared at him, her eyes practically shooting fire. Didn't he realize that she had been joking before? There was no way a nearly 5 feet 7 inches kid could still be called a child. Knowing that Kurenai was still upset, Yagyu raised his hands in mock surrender, deciding to stay quiet. "Let's go get something to eat, I'm starving," Kurenai said abruptly, trying to ease the tension. Yagyu and Karen quickly followed her out of the room. Standing next to Yagyu, Karen whispered apologetically, "Yagyu-kun, I'm so sorry. This was all my fault." Yagyu glanced at Kurenai ahead of them and said in a slightly exaggerated tone, "Don't worry about it. Kurenai-sensei is the kindest and most gentle beauty in the entire shinobi world. She won't hold it against you." Puffed. Kurenai couldn't help but stifle a laugh, her earlier frustration melting away. She turned around and scolded them playfully, "Why are you two walking so far behind? I'm starving here. Come on, you two know this place better than I do, so lead the way to the best restaurant." "Yes, right away." Yagyu responded, quickly catching up to her with Karen by his side as they led her to one of the best restaurants in Tanzaka town. In truth, Kurenai wasn't actually all that hungry. While she had been unconscious, Yagyu had made sure that Karen fed her 3 soldier pills every day. Each pill was enough to provide the energy of one full meal, so she hadn't gone without nourishment. But this was Kurenai's way of moving past the earlier embarrassment. With their cooperation, the atmosphere quickly returned to normal. However, despite their best efforts, the dynamics between teacher and student had shifted. Once a boundary is crossed, things can never fully return to their original state. Meanwhile, over at the casino, Tsunade's mood was far from good. She stared at the pile of cash she had just won and at the devastated gamblers around her, but felt no joy from the victory. She had won. Tsunade couldn't even remember the last time she'd won a game of chance, but she knew from experience that every time she won, something bad was bound to happen. Without another word, she lost all interest in gambling and prepared to leave Tanzaka town with Shizun. "Tsunade, it's been a while," a familiar voice called out as she turned a corner. Tsunade's face grew complicated as she saw the person standing before her. "Orochimaru," she muttered. At the same time, Yagyu, who was having a meal with Kurenai and Karen, raised his eyebrows slightly. His sensory abilities had detected two powerful chakra signatures meeting. It seemed that Orochimaru had found Tsunade, which meant that Jiraiya and Naruto weren't far behind. After finishing their meal, Yagyu and Karen accompanied Kurenai as they strolled around the bustling streets of Tanzaka town. Compared to the nearby smaller villages, Tanzaka town was one of Konoha's commercial hubs, filled with shops selling goods that couldn't be found in the village, and at cheaper prices too. Kurenai dragged Yagyu and Karen from store to store, shopping for clothes, and nearly wore the two of them out, despite their special physiques. The problem was that Kurenai spent most of her time browsing without buying anything, and even when she found something she liked, she agonized over whether or not to buy it, repeatedly asking Yagyu and Karen for their opinions before finally deciding not to purchase it due to the price. Though physically unfazed, both Yagyu and Karen were mentally exhausted by the end. Yagyu couldn't say for sure how strong Itachi's Tsukuyomi was, but at this point, he would have preferred enduring it over accompanying Kurenai on another shopping spree. Still, as the saying goes, you owe a debt for every favor received. After receiving such a benefit from Kurenai earlier, Yagyu had no choice but to endure. Karen felt the same. By the time they were done shopping, it was already late afternoon, and Kurenai had bought only 5 items, 2 of which were for Yagyu and Karen, which deeply moved Karen to tears. Not only had Kurenai vouched for her and forgiven her mistake, but she had also bought her clothes. What a kind and wonderful teacher Yagyu-kun had. After shopping, it was time for dinner, and Kurenai took them to another restaurant. By the time they finished their meal, night had fallen. After their long day, Kurenai finally suggested they head back to rest. On the way back, they passed by a tavern, and Kurenai's gaze lingered on a sign advertising a new type of drink. Since her defeat by Raiga Kurosuke, Kurenai had avoided alcohol, but now her resolve wavered. The memory of being easily defeated by Itachi, combined with the realization that Yagyu had managed to fend off 2 S-rank rogue ninjas and rescue her, struck her deeply. The gap in their strength weighed on her. Additionally, the earlier incident had left her with no authority or dignity as Yagyu's teacher. So, with a determined look, Kurenai bit her lip and said, "You two wait here for a moment. I'm going inside to buy something." With that, she headed into the tavern. She had decided to give up. If her student was already so much stronger than her, and she had lost all sense of authority, why bother trying to maintain her strict discipline? Yes, it was all Yagyu's fault. Satisfied with her justification, Kurenai almost skipped into the tavern. Seeing her sudden change in mood, Yagyu smirked slightly and turned to Karen. "Let's go in as well." "All right," Karen nodded obediently. As soon as they entered the tavern, they heard Kurenai's surprised voice exclaiming, "Lady Tsunade. Lord Jiraiya." Following the direction of her voice, Yagyu spotted Tsunade and Jiraiya sitting at the bar, drinking. Next to them were Naruto, eating his meal, and Shizun, holding her little pet pig. These 4 were unmistakably Tsunade, Jiraiya, Naruto, and Shizun. "You are." Tsunade, slightly tipsy, squinted at Kurenai, trying to remember her. "Aren't you that girl from the Yuhi clan?" "Yes, Lady Tsunade," Kurenai nodded enthusiastically, starstruck by meeting her idol. Well, you've grown up," Tsunade said, swirling her drink. "Do you drink? Want to have a glass with me?" "Of course." Kurenai immediately accepted, excited for the rare opportunity to drink with her idol. "Yagyu, is that you?" Naruto's voice suddenly cut in. Naruto's shout drew everyone's attention to Yagyu, causing Kurenai to slap her forehead in slight embarrassment. She had nearly forgotten about her student. That hair color. Both Tsunade and Jiraiya, despite their tipsy states, suddenly focused on Karen beside Yagyu, their eyes sharpening. Sensing their attention, Karen instinctively shrank back, hiding behind Yagyu as much as possible. As she peeked at the legendary duo, her heart raced with fear. Their chakra. It's so powerful. "Naruto?" Yagyu asked, feigning surprise. "What are you doing here?" I came with Pervy Sage to find this old lady, Naruto replied, gesturing toward Tsunade with his chopsticks, completely unaware of the impending danger. Crack! Tsunade's sake cup shattered in her hand, her face darkening ominously. Naruto's body shivered involuntarily, a chill running down his spine. He's just a kid, Tsunade. No need to get upset. Let's just enjoy our drinks, Jiraiya quickly intervened, attempting to smooth things over. He grabbed a new cup and refilled Tsunade's sake. Humph. Tsunade huffed, but didn't explode in anger. After learning who Naruto was, she couldn't help but see a reflection of Kushina Uzumaki in him. His personality was just like hers, fiery, but not the sharpest. As she downed her drink, Tsunade continued to study Karen, her eyes gleaming with interest. This girl, her chakra is brimming with vitality. And her red hair. Could it be? Could she really be a descendant of that clan after all these years? Seeing Tsunade's keen interest, Jiraiya was about to bring up a topic to ease the tension, when something clicked in his mind. His eyes lit up as he said, "Oh, Tsunade. I should introduce you to someone." He turned toward Yagyu and gestured for him to come over. "Hey, kid, come here for a second." Lord Jiraiya, Lady Tsunade, Yagyu greeted them respectfully as he walked over, bowing slightly. His polite demeanor, in stark contrast to Naruto's lack of manners, left a positive impression on both Tsunade and Shizune. "So, Yagyu, you know the pervy sage and old hag?" Naruto asked curiously. "Naruto, seriously?" Yagyu sighed. "You don't remember the lesson in 2nd grade about famous historical figures? Lord Jiraiya and Lady Tsunade are legendary shinobi, known as the Sannin, and are written about in textbooks." "Oh, right." Naruto smacked his palm with his fist as if the information had just clicked. "Ha ha ha. You're a sharp one, kid. No wonder you're the top student," Jiraiya chuckled, clearly enjoying the flattery. Tsunade and Shizune also looked at Yagyu with approval. Compared to Naruto's brashness, Yagyu's polished manners made him stand out even more. Just as Tsunade was about to start a conversation with Yagyu, Jiraiya suddenly chimed in, "Tsunade, this young man is named Yagyu. He's one of your clansmen." Puffed, cough cough. Tsunade spat out her drink, choking as her face turned bright red. Already tipsy, she clenched her shattered cup again, glaring at Jiraiya with a steely gaze. "Jiraiya, are you serious?" Chapter 73, The Ultimate Deception, Tsunade's Gift, and Yagyu's Great Gains. Gulp. Watching Tsunade's fists, which could shatter the earth and had once nearly killed him, Jiraiya instinctively swallowed and quickly said, "I'm not joking. This is what teacher Sarutobi said, Yagyu's physique seems to be like the 1st and 2nd Hokage's. Plus, he can use the 2nd Hokage's hard whirlpool water blade." Hard whirlpool water blade. Hearing the name of the jutsu, Tsunade's eyes lit up. She then looked at Yagyu and asked, "Kid, did you develop this water release technique yourself, or was it passed down in your family?" Without blinking, Yagyu lied, "It was passed down in my family. I found a scroll while cleaning the house when I was a kid. Besides the hard whirlpool water blade, do you know any other water release techniques?" "Yes." "How about water release, severing wave or water release, water dragon bite?" "I know both." Yagyu nodded, and Tsunade's face broke into a genuine smile. Before she could verify it, Kurenai Yuhi spoke up, "I can vouch for Yagyu on this. On our way here, we encountered Uchiha Itachi, an S-rank rogue ninja, and Kisame Hashigaki, the monster of the hidden mist, also an S-rank rogue ninja. Yagyu used many powerful water release techniques." Jiraiya was shocked as he looked at Kurenai Yuhi. "You ran into them too?" "Uchiha Itachi." Naruto looked worried, recalling how Uchiha Sasuke was easily defeated by Itachi. He couldn't help but wonder how Sasuke was doing now. Silver hair and red eyes, he really does resemble the 2nd Hokage when he was young. The more Tsunade looked at Yagyu, the more she liked him. She waved her hand, saying, "Yagyu, come closer so I can have a good look at you." Yagyu obediently approached. When Yagyu stood in front of her, Tsunade suddenly grabbed his wrist and, by checking his pulse, sent her chakra into his body. In the next moment, Tsunade's tipsy eyes suddenly became clear. This chakra. Tsunade stared blankly at Yagyu for a moment before pulling him into a hug, wrapping her arm around his neck, and laughing heartily. Haha, so strong. With chakra like this and such a powerful life force, you really are a descendant of the Senju of the forest. Damn it, I'm so jealous. Jiraiya looked enviously at Yagyu, nearly crushing the cup he was holding. Yagyu, now with his face pressed against Tsunade's chest, appeared uncomfortable and even resistant. You don't want this. Let me take your place. Jiraiya thought to himself, clearly frustrated. Tsunade-sama, congratulations on finding a member of your clan. Shizen smiled as she congratulated her master, who hadn't laughed this freely in a long time. Kurenai Yuhi was also happy for Yagyu. Before, everyone had speculated that Yagyu was a descendant of the Senju clan, and most of them were 99% convinced. However, without any solid proof or official confirmation, Yagyu was still considered an orphan and a civilian. Now, with Tsunade, who, as the granddaughter of both the first and second Hokage, was the head of one of Konoha's most prestigious families, confirming his identity, it was as if Yagyu's name had been written into the Senju clan's records. Once this news spread to Konoha, Yagyu would no longer be an orphan. Instead, he would be recognized as a descendant of the Senju, one of the most powerful clans in Konoha's history. His status as a commoner orphan would transform into that of an elite from a noble family. From then on, if Yagyu pursued relationships with people like Hinata or Ino, there would be no barriers of status or rank. No one would accuse him of trying to climb the social ladder. In fact, he would be the ladder. That's the power and prestige that comes with being a member of the Senju, Konoha's first family, the most elite clan in the ninja world. Besides the second Hokage's water release, do you know any other techniques? Tsunade finally let go of Yagyu after laughing for a while and pressed him into a chair Shizen had thoughtfully vacated. Do you know how to use chakra enhancement, like the monster strength technique? No. Yagyu shook his head and, in a tone full of hidden meaning, said, besides water release, I know some other techniques, but they're not convenient to show. You're smart. That's the right decision, Tsunade praised him, thinking he was referring to some of the second Hokage's forbidden techniques. She patted him on the shoulder. Do you have a summoning beast? Not yet. Hearing this, Tsunade immediately said to Shizen, once we finish drinking, help Yagyu sign a contract with the Shikatsu forest. Yes, Tsunade-sama, Shizen replied. Tsunade-sama, isn't this a bit too much? Yagyu tried to modestly refuse, but Tsunade pulled him into another hug, saying, just take it, it's a gift from your elder. All right, Yagyu finally agreed, but inside, he was ecstatic. He never imagined that mastering the hardest part of Sage Mode would be this easy. Though Yagyu wasn't sure if Hashirama's Sage Mode came naturally from developing his Sage body or from learning it from the Shikatsu forest, he was certain that the forest had its own unique Sage Mode. After all, the Shikatsu forest was on par with Mount Myaboku and Ryuchi Cave, and the three were known as the three great sage regions. The rulers of these lands were all sages. If he learned Sage Mode, Yagyu's release would become even more powerful. Good boy. Can you drink? Tsunade asked, liking him more and more. Tsunade-sama, Yagyu is only 12. He can't drink yet, Kurenai Yuhi quickly said. Ninja rules are such a hassle, Tsunade grumbled. Then you drink with me, she said to Kurenai. Sure. Kurenai's eyes sparkled, eager for the challenge. Yagyu stood up, saying, Teacher Kurenai, I'll take Karen home now. Wait. Tsunade waved Karen over. Come here, too. Yes. Learning that Tsunade was Yagyu's elder, Karen obediently complied. Just like with Yagyu, Tsunade grabbed Karen's wrist and sent her chakra into the girl's body. Soon, Tsunade smiled again and asked, Karen, do you have a surname? No, but... Karen shook her head, then added, Yagyu-kun says I'm a descendant of the Uzumaki clan. Tsunade turned to Yagyu and asked, how do you know she's from the Uzumaki clan? Because she awakened the Uzumaki clan's unique abilities, including physical healing and the mind's eye of the Kagura, Yagyu explained calmly, as he had to Kurenai before. I met Karen during the Chunin exams. I accidentally saved her and noticed several bite marks on her arms of different shapes and sizes. After learning that this was a unique healing technique, I deduced that she was a descendant of the Uzumaki clan. Later, she awakened a special sensory ability with an incredibly wide range, which further confirmed my theory. Slap. Before Tsunade could speak, Jiraiya smacked Naruto on the head and scolded, "See the benefits of studying hard. Look at how much knowledge this top student has. And you, a dead last, still haven't mastered the Rasengan. Ow. That hurts, pervy sage. That's what happens when you don't study. You can't even understand shape transformation, so how could you expect to learn the Rasengan? Who says? I'm almost there. I'll be able to do it soon. Yeah, right. You're only halfway there. Come back when you can do it with one hand. Just wait. I'll prove you wrong. By the way, what's the Uzumaki clan? Why do they have the same surname as me? Am I related to them? No, you're not. They have special abilities. Do you have any? No, I don't think so. Ignoring their bickering, Tsunade nodded and said, those two abilities are indeed unique to the Uzumaki clan. Karen is definitely a descendant. You came here to bring Karen back to Konoha, right? Tsunade accurately deduced. Yes, Yagyu repeated what he had told Kurenai earlier. Karen was a ninja from the grass village and was used as a medical tool. When I saved her, her chakra was nowhere near what it should be for an Uzumaki. If she kept using it like that, she would have died from overexertion. I felt a sense of familiarity with her, so after learning her background, I took it upon myself to help her leave the grass village and stay here. I waited until after the Chunin exams to ask teacher Kurenai to come with me to vouch for her so she could join Konoha. Yagyu-kun. Karen's eyes filled with tears, moved by his kindness. Even Shizun was deeply impressed by Yagyu. This relative of Tsunade's is so exceptional. From the moment Yagyu arrived, the knowledge he had displayed, along with his calm and rational actions, left Shizun in awe. No wonder she had never been able to compete with geniuses like him when she was younger. True geniuses are on a whole different level. Tsunade, feeling a bit emotional, patted Yagyu's head and said, "It seems you know a lot. Hiding so much at such a young age must have been tough for you." Yagyu just smiled, which Tsunade interpreted as confirmation. So, she softly said, "Don't rush back to Konoha just yet. You can return with Jiraiya. Let him be Karen's official sponsor. Tsunade, you should come back with us too." Jiraiya seized the opportunity to persuade her again. There's no one more qualified to sponsor Karen, and no one more suited to become the fifth Hokage. Now that you've found your people, along with Lady Mito's clan members, don't you want to protect them as they grow? Let's just drink. This time, Tsunade didn't respond with her usual, only an idiot would want to be Hokage, but instead fell silent, choosing to change the subject. The atmosphere shifted. Kurenai Yuhi quickly raised her cup to Tsunade, smiling, "Tsunade-sama, I toast to you. Let's drink." Tsunade clinked glasses with Kurenai, and the two women began a drinking contest. Seeing this, Yagyu stopped talking about leaving and instead stood with Shizun, watching the two compete. It was clear that one of them wouldn't be leaving upright tonight. Yagyu and Shizun decided to stay and make sure nothing went wrong. As expected, the drinking continued late into the night, ending only when the bar closed. Jiraiya, who hadn't seen Tsunade in a long time, soon joined in as well. The three adults drank themselves into oblivion. Fortunately, they were drinking sake with a low alcohol content, otherwise, they would have passed out long ago. Even so, after drinking for hours, all three eventually slumped over the bar. As the drinking session finally ended, Yagyu, Shizun, and Naruto helped carry Tsunade and the others out. On the way, Shizun asked, "Yagyu-kun, are you staying at an inn?" "No, we're staying at Karen's place. She rented a house here in Tanzaku town. Then tomorrow at noon, come to the Yoshii Inn, and I'll help you sign the contract with the Shikatsu forest." "Okay, thank you, Shizune-san. See you tomorrow." Soon, the group parted ways at a crossroads. Yagyu carried Kurenai on his back and, along with Karen, returned to their lodging, where Karen took care of the drunken Kurenai while Yagyu went to take a bath. Standing under the shower, Yagyu let the warm water hit his face as a satisfied smile crept onto his lips. Everything had gone perfectly. Ever since he graduated, Yagyu realized that everything was going his way. No matter what plans he made, they all seemed to work out just as he hoped. At that moment, Yagyu truly understood just how big an advantage it was to know the future storyline. Tomorrow, he would finalize everything, tying up all the loose ends of his plans. His bold strategies had allowed him to gain the wood-release bloodline, the second Hokage's water-release techniques, the Uzumaki clan's sealing techniques and the Death God mask, along with the Senju legacy, summoning techniques, and Sage mode, which were still within reach. Besides becoming more powerful, Yagyu had also gained Karen as a loyal ally, the identity of a Senju descendant, and, upon his return to the village, the title of Konoha's Crown Prince. Although Yagyu hadn't participated in the Konoha Crush Plan, the aftermath of the event had allowed him to grow immensely in strength. Thinking of this, Yagyu couldn't wait for tomorrow to arrive. Neither Shizune, Karen, Naruto, Jiraiya, nor Kurenai noticed that during their drinking contest, Tsunade had secretly slipped something into Jiraiya's drink. But Yagyu did. This meant that tomorrow would be a reunion of the legendary Sannin after many years. And there would be Northwest better place than that for Yagyu to showcase the power of his wood release for the first time. Chapter 74, Wood Release. Advent of a World of Flowering Trees. The next morning, Yagyu woke up a little after 9 a.m. This was very unusual for him, as he usually woke up early for his daily training. By this time, Karen and Kurenai Yuhi had already gotten up. "Yagyu-kun, I've made you breakfast," Karen said. When Yagyu finished washing up and came out, Karen immediately brought out the dishes she had covered. "Thank you, Karen," Yagyu smiled, nodding as he ate the carefully prepared breakfast. As Yagyu ate, Kurenai Yuhi spoke up. "Last night, Tsunade-sama said we should return with Jiraiya-sama. What do you think, Yagyu?" Yagyu accepted the milk Karen handed him, took a sip, and replied, "I think it's a good idea. With Jiraiya-sama as her sponsor, Karen might be able to bypass the inspection process." "I think so too," Kurenai agreed, nodding. Although her time with Karen had been brief, it was enough for her to see Karen's character. This girl, like many orphans from small nations, had suffered a tragic fate. However, unlike others, Karen came from a noble background, and it was remarkable that her personality had not been twisted by her hardships. Her care and attentiveness the previous night, including giving up her room and sleeping on the couch, were signs of her selflessness. And Karen's absolute obedience to Yagyu, seeming as if she would follow any command, even to the point of death, was striking. Without even needing an inspection, Kurenai was certain there was nothing wrong with Karen. If possible, Kurenai did not want Karen to go through Konoha's interrogation unit. That department, like the ANBU, could be very dark at times. They might use violent methods, including mind-altering genjutsu, or even forcefully read Karen's memories, which could harm her mind and brain. As just one of Konoha's jonin, Kurenai had no authority to stop the village from interrogating Karen, nor the influence to sway the interrogation unit's decisions. However, if Jiraiya brought Karen back, it would be a completely different story. Jiraiya was a direct disciple of the third Hokage, the teacher of the fourth Hokage, and one of the legendary Sannin, someone even elite jonin had to respect as a superior. If Jiraiya vouched for Karen, the interrogation unit would likely go through the motions, but the inspection would be minimal. After Yagyu finished breakfast, the three of them set out for the Yoshii Inn, where Shizune had told them to meet. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Before they could reach the inn, the sound of body flickers filled the air. Jiraiya, Shizune, and Naruto appeared in an instant, moving so quickly that they barely paused before passing by. Shizune's voice echoed as they moved ahead, "Yagyu, you're just in time, hurry and follow us." Exchanging glances with Kurenai, Yagyu immediately used the body flicker technique to catch up. Once next to Shizune, Kurenai asked, "Shizune-san, what's going on?" Shizune's face was grim. "Tsunade-sama went to meet Orochimaru alone." "Orochimaru?" Kurenai's eyes widened in shock. She hadn't expected the killer of the third Hokage to be in Tanzaku town. "It's my fault. I didn't expect Tsunade to drug me," Jiraiya said, full of regret. Then, as if recalling something, his eyes brightened, and he turned to Karen, saying, "Karen, didn't Yagyu say you awakened the mind's eye of the Kagura last night? Can you sense where Tsunade is right now?" Shizune's eyes also lit up, and she urged, "Karen, please help." "I'll try." Karen formed a hand seal, closed her eyes, and focused all her energy on using the mind's eye of the Kagura. "I found her." In no time, Karen opened her eyes and pointed to the 10 o'clock direction. Tsunade-sama is far away in that direction, about 20 kilometers from here. Upon hearing this, Shizun immediately sped up, and Yagyu and the others followed suit. A distance of 20 kilometers was nothing for them at full speed. Earlier, they had been searching for Tsunade by following her scent, which slowed them down. Now that they knew her exact location, it took them less than a minute to leave Tanzaka town and enter the dense forests typical of a land of fire. The scenery blurred past them, as if they were on a high-speed train from Yagyu's previous life. After just 5 minutes, they exited the forest and reached a vast grassland. Tsunade-sama! Shizun cried out. In front of them, on the physically ravaged grassland, stood 3 figures, Tsunade, Orochimaru, and Kabuto Yakushi. Tsunade was in terrible condition. Though not physically injured, she was kneeling on the ground, hugging herself, her body trembling uncontrollably. Her face and body were stained with blood, the sight of which was triggering her hemophobia, her intense fear of blood. Very few people knew about this phobia, but Orochimaru was one of them. You arrived quickly, but unfortunately, you're too late, Kabuto said with a calm expression, his hands glowing with blue chakra as he aimed an attack at the incapacitated Tsunade. Not good. Jiraiya and the others were shocked at this sight. ZZZT, ZZZT, ZZZT. Suddenly, the sound of crackling electricity filled the air. Yagyu, surrounded by blue and white lightning, shot forward like a bolt of lightning, leaving Shizun and the others far behind. Naruto stared in astonishment at Yagyu's incredible speed. Kabuto's expression also changed as he recognized Yagyu and recalled the intelligence he had gathered on him. Intending to kill Tsunade in front of Jiraiya and the others to make them feel helpless, Kabuto quickly changed his mind. Instead, he decided to capture Tsunade. The combination of S-rank water release techniques and Yagyu's illusionary body flicker technique was too troublesome. Even though Orochimaru could still hold off Jiraiya, Kabuto knew he couldn't handle Yagyu, Shizun, and Kurenai together. Therefore, rather than killing Tsunade, he had to control her. In the brief moment Kabuto hesitated, Yagyu finished his one-handed seals. Water release, severing wave. A high-pressure stream of water shot from Yagyu's mouth. The moisture in the air condensed into a straight beam of water, cutting through the air like a blue laser. But Yagyu wasn't aiming for Kabuto. Instead, he targeted the ground in front of Tsunade. The water beam hadn't yet reached its destination, but it already dug a deep, straight trench into the ground, cutting through the earth with surgical precision as it headed toward Tsunade. Seeing this powerful water beam rushing toward him, Kabuto had no choice but to abandon his attempt to capture Tsunade. Watching the incredible force of the water, Orochimaru's raspy voice murmured, "Severing wave. This kid really is a descendant of the Senju." Orochimaru. Jiraiya's voice rang out, filled with anger. "You killed Sarutobi-sensei and now dare to harm Tsunade. I won't let you go this time. You think you can stop me, you fool." Even though Orochimaru had lost the ability to use ninjutsu, he still sneered. Kabuto. Yes, Orochimaru-sama. Kabuto immediately understood and used a kunai to cut Orochimaru's palm, using his blood for summoning seals. Summoning jutsu. Boom. The sound of something massive exploding echoed through the area. A huge cloud of white smoke spread across the battlefield. "Orochimaru, for summoning me, you owe me 100 live sacrifices," a rebellious voice said before the smoke even cleared. As the wind blew away the smoke, a gigantic purple serpent appeared on the grassland. Its vertical pupils looked down at Yagyu and the others, and when it spotted Tsunade kneeling on the ground and Jiraiya standing nearby, the serpent, Manda, paused and mockingly asked, "Orochimaru, are you hosting a class reunion?" Orochimaru leaped onto Manda's head and replied, "Kill them for me, and I'll give you 300 sacrifices." "No problem. I've long hated that toad." At that moment, Jiraiya's voice rang out, summoning jutsu. A similarly massive cloud of smoke appeared, and both Orochimaru and Manda tensed, expecting to face Jiraiya's powerful toad summon. But when the smoke cleared, a small toad, barely the size of a palm, appeared instead. Orochimaru. Manda. Jiraiya's eyes widened in disbelief as he shouted, "Gamakichi. Where's Gamabunta? I was eating with Dad. Can't you check the time before summoning me, you dumb OL?" Gamakichi began to complain, but when he saw it was Jiraiya who had summoned him, he froze and said, "Jiraiya-san. Why did you summon me?" Realizing the danger, Gamakichi looked up at the towering Manda and trembled in fear. "Jiraiya-san, you don't expect me to fight that, do you?" Orochimaru shook his head. "After all these years, you're still as stupid as ever." Summoning Jutsu. Just as Orochimaru was about to breathe a sigh of relief and prepare to finish off Jiraiya with Manda, another voice shouted from nearby. Orochimaru's expression changed slightly. Standing beside Jiraiya, Naruto had also used a summoning jutsu. Another large cloud of smoke appeared. Orochimaru's face grew serious once more as he muttered, "The Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. I forgot about that kid." But when the smoke cleared, a toad the same size as Gamakichi appeared on the grassland. "Gamatatsu." Jiraiya's eyes widened again, calling out the small toad's name. Naruto, equally frustrated, shouted, "Why is it another tiny toad? Where's the boss toad?" This comedic back and forth between Jiraiya and Naruto added a strange humor to the otherwise tense and deadly battlefield. Even Orochimaru and Manda, usually cold and indifferent, couldn't help but twitch their lips at the ridiculous scene. Their enemies had such reactions, so it was no surprise that Shizune and Kurenai were also speechless. Kurenai's forehead was covered in sweat, and Shizune rubbed her temple in frustration. If not for her respect for Jiraiya and the fact that Tsunade had caused this situation, Shizune might have asked if they were there for comedy relief. This isn't funny at all, she thought. Yagyu, however, frowned slightly and asked, "Jiraiya-sama, how long will it take for your body to recover?" 10 minutes. Jiraiya answered seriously. "Just give me 10 minutes, and I'll be fine." 10 minutes, huh? That's too long. Yagyu glanced at Tsunade, still trembling in fear and kneeling on the ground, then stepped forward with a determined expression. "In that case, I'll protect Tsunade-ne-sama." The change in his address snapped Tsunade out of her fearful trance. Looking at Yagyu standing tall in front of her, his silver hair and youthful frame reminded her of Dankato and Nawaki. Clap. Yagyu suddenly clapped his hands together, and a surge of blue chakra flames erupted from his body. Seeing this, Orochimaru's expression darkened, and he urged, "Manda, kill them." With Tsunade and Jiraiya both incapacitated, the most dangerous person on the field, in Orochimaru's eyes, was now Yagyu. He knew all about this civilian genius who had surpassed Uchiha Sasuke. As a near-confirmed descendant of the Senju, Yagyu had mastered the second Hokage's hard whirlpool water blade and severing wave, as well as powerful illusion and body flicker techniques reminiscent of Shisui Uchiha's. Had Orochimaru still had the use of his hands, he wouldn't have taken Yagyu seriously, aside from his illusionary body flicker technique. But in his current state, Yagyu was the greatest threat. "I'll devour them all in one bite." Manda roared as its massive upper body dove down, mouth wide open, ready to swallow Yagyu and the others along with the ground beneath them. Would release. Yagyu's soft utterance of the jutsu's name sent shockwaves through everyone, Orochimaru, Kabuto, Jiraiya, Kurenai, Tsunade, and Shizune alike. Then Yagyu shouted, "Advent of a world of flowering trees." Rumble, rumble. The entire grassland shook violently as if an earthquake had struck. It was as though something massive was awakening beneath the earth, and deep cracks began to form all around. Suddenly, gigantic tree trunks burst from the ground, as thick as several people or even dozens of people could wrap their arms around, like snakes uncoiling. These massive green branches rapidly sprouted leaves and transformed into towering trees. Manda, in mid-descent, slammed into the wall of trees that had sprung up before him. In the next moment, Manda, along with Orochimaru and Kabuto beneath him, was swallowed by the wave of growing trees. The cracks in the ground continued to widen, and countless branches surged forth, pushing aside the still-growing trees and forming a tidal wave of greenery that rolled forward. From an aerial view, it looked as if a green tidal wave was spreading outward in a fan shape, expanding in all directions. The wave grew larger and larger, leaving towering trees in its wake. The small grove quickly turned into a forest, which then became a vast sea of trees. Chapter 75, Yagyu, Naruto, I am the Hokage. The surging sea of trees had stretched far, and the rumbling of the earth had lasted for who knew how long before everything finally came to a stop. By then, Jiraiya and the others were completely dumbfounded, unable to even describe their feelings, as if a storm had swept through their minds. Where there had once been a vast, endless grassland now stood a colossal forest. Each tree towered tens of meters high, requiring a dozen or so people to circle their trunks. It felt as if their entire worldview had been shattered and reshaped. Among the group, only Jiraiya and Tsunade were at the Kage level of strength. The most powerful person they had ever encountered was Hanzo the Salamander, often called the demigod. When Hashirama Senju, the first Hokage, died, Tsunade had still been very young. And after Konoha was established, Hashirama became synonymous with invincibility, recognized as the god of shinobi across the ninja world. Aside from Madara Uchiha and Kakuzu, no one dared challenge him. Thus, Tsunade had never witnessed her grandfather's would release in action. Hanzo's power was immense, even Tsunade, Orochimaru, and Jiraiya together hadn't been able to defeat him. It was their defeat against Hanzo that earned them the title of the legendary Sannin, making their names famous across the ninja world. However, Hanzo's strength had its limits. He didn't have techniques with such wide-ranging destructive power. If they were to face Hanzo again, both Jiraiya and Tsunade were confident they wouldn't lose. The most powerful technique Jiraiya and Tsunade had ever seen was the tailed beast bomb from a Jinchuriki, which could obliterate a small mountain in a single strike. That's why a Jinchuriki was considered the strongest weapon of any village. But when compared to the forest that had replaced the grassland, even the tailed beast bomb seemed insignificant. As for Kurenai Yuhi and Shizune, being only Jonin, the most powerful figures they knew of were the 5 Kage and the legendary Sannin. They hadn't even seen the 5 Kage or the Sannin in action. In Kurenai's mind, the most terrifying sight she'd ever witnessed was the Ninetales during its attack on Konoha, though her memories of the event had grown fuzzy. However, compared to the forest before her, even the Ninetales paled in comparison. Naruto and Karen were in even greater shock. Naruto stood in stunned silence, his mouth agape, unable to utter a word as he stared at the massive forest. In Naruto's eyes, techniques like the Chidori and Rasengan were incredibly powerful, capable of destroying a tree. But those were ordinary trees. The forest before him resembled the towering trees of the Forest of Death. In that moment, Naruto suddenly felt that Sasuke's Chidori and Jiraiya's Rasengan were rather underwhelming. Originally, he had thought that once he learned the Rasengan, he'd be ready to challenge Yagyu and maybe even win. But now, that thought vanished instantly. There's no way I could compete with him. It's over. They've run away. Yagyu's voice broke the silence, though he thought to himself, I let them escape. Gulp. Jiraiya finally snapped out of his daze, his voice trembling as he asked the obvious question, Yagyu, where did you learn would release? Clearly, his brain was struggling to process what had just happened. I awakened it when I was 7, Yagyu lied, picking a highly sensitive age. Kurenai Yuhi's eyes widened in shock. Is this the hidden ace you've been keeping from us? Yes, sensei, Yagyu nodded with a smile. Sorry for keeping it a secret for so long. Tsunade-sama, you. At that moment, Shizune gasped in surprise. Tsunade, who had been kneeling nearby, slowly stood up and began walking toward Yagyu. Seeing Tsunade approaching, Yagyu started to speak, Tsunade-sama, I. Before he could finish, Tsunade pulled him into a tight embrace. Call me, Ne-san. I like that, Tsunade said as she hugged Yagyu's head, ruffling his hair. Her eyes, which had been dull, now sparkled with life. The blood on her face and clothes no longer bothered her at all. Tsu. Tsunade-ne-san. Yagyu muttered, his voice muffled as he was smothered by Tsunade's ample chest. You're such a good boy. Tsunade finally let go of his neck, cupping his head in her hands and planting a kiss on his forehead. Then, she took off the necklace she wore around her neck and placed it around Yagyu's. This is a keepsake from my granduncle. I'm giving it to you. Before Yagyu could respond, Tsunade turned to face Jiraiya and the others, her expression resolute. I've made up my mind. I'm going back to Konoha to take on the role of 5th Hokage. In that moment, Tsunade completely let go of her past. The people she had lost could not be brought back, but now there were new people who needed her protection. The love and anger she felt for those she cared about allowed her to overcome her hemophobia in an instant. Yagyu had awakened would release at the age of 7, yet even his own Jonin instructor hadn't known. Besides the water release techniques from her granduncle, he hadn't dared to use his strongest power, would release, until now. His intelligence and caution made Tsunade's heart ache. Tsunade, who had once lost all those she cared for, had left the village to avoid witnessing its darkness. But now, she had found someone new to care about.